Hey, Betsy.
Very interesting.
All right, so we're ready for the... All right. Five.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the school committee meeting. It is June 15th, Thursday of 2023. And we are going to begin by continuing what we were just celebrating from 5:30 till now, which is staff recognitions for teachers, staffs, members, and those who've been contributing to the public schools of Brookline for 30 or more years. So we are joined today by Robin Matrano of the Lincoln School, Diane Mundell of the Lawrence School, Emily Rahm, also of the Lawrence School, and Deborah Winkler of Brookline High School, who, by the way, you were my 7th grade math teacher. So you were, yes. Back when you were at Devotion.
What a surprise.
All right, Dr. Guillory.
Thank you, Chair Perlman. So with that, we will begin with our first honoree tonight. We have Robin Matrano, the senior custodian over at Lincoln School, and I'm going to pass the microphone over to Mr. Denizio for his remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Guillory. Thank you, school committee, for giving me this opportunity to be there to speak tonight about Robin. I also want to say hi to Robin. And also that is slightly jarring to see my big face up there behind you guys, but hello and thank you. I've had the pleasure to work with Robin Matrano at Lincoln School for the last 9 of her 30 years in the district. And I'm thrilled to have the chance to be here tonight to speak about her contributions, her hard work and dedication has made to Lincoln. So many of the things that are positive for kids in our community happen because Robin leans into the hard work of making them happen. For example, we get a lot of credit at Lincoln for being at the forefront of school-based composting programs. But that program never would have gained traction without support and work from Robin. She helped quite literally to create the physical space for composting infrastructure in our cafeteria and throughout COVID in our hallways. But she also created the space and showed the patience to help our middle school students take on a leadership role in educating our youngest students about how to compost. Back when schools reopened in September 2020, there was so much to do to prepare and maintain our physical space and infrastructure. It meant moving and storing furniture to accommodate distancing, distributing PPE and sanitizing supplies, sanitizing our shared spaces regularly. I really can't underscore enough how vital the work of Robin and her partner Frank Cole were in responding to the kinds of changing guidelines that we saw. They turned our library into a first grade classroom and then turned it right back into a library again for the next fall. Literally whatever needed to be done, whatever ideas I maybe had about how to better use spaces or how to move people in the building, Robin was there to not only physically make it happen, but also do it in a way and do it in a fashion so that people and students, so that our students and staff could feel safe. I also say that despite all that, we also kept that composting program alive. Even when lunch and snack were outdoors or in classrooms, she distributed and maintained bins across the building, both inside and out, to keep that program running. Finally, the kinds of community events like Pumpkin Fest or school picnics or this year's 8th grade dance, they're made possible because of Robin's commitment to making Lincoln a welcoming space for the community. She partners with students and our parents and parent leaders in the PTO to plan for the preparation and cleanup for all these events. It's far, far too easy to take for granted what Robin does for our community because so much of it happens before and after schools. We want our schools to not only be learning spaces, but also to be communities in the fullest sense of the word. And Lincoln couldn't be the community it is without Robin's support. And I see that work going on year round throughout the summer. First, in those quieter days in July, shampooing rugs and polishing floors. And it's in those quieter moments that we get the chance to chat. And it's there that I get to hear about her family, and most especially her devotion to her son and her husband. And it's clear to me that she's as integral to the way that things run at home as she is to the way that things run at Lincoln. And clear too that she always is taking care of people and always balancing a lot. So like I said, there are those quieter days in July when we're prepping rooms, and then she is in those hectic days towards the end of August working endlessly to help get our classrooms ready for teachers to move back in and set up, and then have all our spaces ready to welcome back students. I am really honored to play this small part in congratulating Robin on her many years of service to the district. And I want to extend my heartfelt thank you to her for making Lincoln a safe and joyful hub in our community.
Hi, thank you very much. I just wanted to say that 30 years ago, I came to Brookline because I needed a job that gave benefits. But I stayed because I love the people and I love helping people. And I kind of feel like that's what my role is. So, thank you.
Next up, we have Miss Diane Mundell. So all of you should pretend I'm Monica Crowley, because I'm reading on behalf of Monica tonight.
Look just like her.
I look just like her. I have known Miss Mundell since September of 2008. She was a 7th and 8th grade English teacher when I met her, and a few years later, she transitioned to be a literacy coach, and she holds that position today. Diane is extremely collaborative and believes in the team approach. She is always willing to help identify problems and brainstorm solutions to support staff and students. Both as an English teacher and literacy coach, she has been and is incredibly thoughtful about how she plans for literacy instruction to meet student needs. Specifically as a coach, her planning sessions with classroom educators has resulted in meaningful, authentic, and culturally proficient learning experiences that meet students' developmental needs. The following are direct quotes from evaluations over the years from different evaluators, which demonstrate her professionalism. Diane has promoted the learning and growth of all students through instructional practices that establish high expectations, create a safe and effective classroom environment, and demonstrate cultural proficiency. Diane is always conscious of creating environments in which students and the adults she coaches are engaged and expected to work to their greatest potential. Diane understands the need and purposes for effective grouping of students. This allows her to support teachers with differentiating instruction to meet the student learning needs based on formal and informal assessments. She is extremely reflective and values working collaboratively with colleagues to support them in their teaching of literacy. Ms. Mundell has done work to promote the learning and growth of all students through effective partnerships with families, caregivers, community members, and organizations. This year, she was helpful in organizing and contributing to the ELA newsletter, which informs the community about the work of that department. She has written and been awarded PTO grants, BEF grants, facilitated the school's literacy team, has been a member of the school council, a member of many building-based student groups, and book clubs. For example, she participated in a building-based study group on making thinking visible and played a key role in creating an effective plan for working with our consultant from Project Zero. She also joined 5 other middle school and high school English teachers who attended the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project Institute on book clubs to explore and plan for powerful book club instruction. Her commitment and belief in being a lifelong learner is evident in her professional development experiences. In addition to being a strong and effective educator, Diane is also a warm, kind, and caring person. Staff gravitate towards her because they know she is there to always listen to them and support them with whatever they need. I am grateful that I met Diane as a person and an educator. I wish her many more years of success and joy as a Brookline educator. Sincerely, Monica Crowley. Congratulations.
I actually did prepare a little bit to say. I felt like it was important to speak because this is such an important milestone for me. So I just want to give a shout out to many people and organizations over the years who supported me as an educator. I want to start by saying thank you to James Walsh, this James Walsh. He was the superintendent when I was hired, and this room is named after him. Jim made me feel optimistic about the teaching profession and about my own abilities as a teacher when I was first starting out. I also want to say thank you to the ever gracious Naomi Gordon, who just passed away. She was well into her 90s. She was my first ELA curriculum coordinator, and her passion for teaching adolescents about literature and writing is with me still. I want to say thank you to Maury Sapoznik, the Lawrence School vice principal who hired me. He is my friend to this day. He taught me what it means to be a member of a community, particularly part of the Brookline community. He's someone who gives back to others in significant ways. I want to say thank you to the Brookline School Staff Child Care Center. It was so difficult to be a working parent 30 years ago, and it's still so difficult to be a working parent, and especially a working teacher parent. And that community, the Brookline School Staff Child Care Center, and those teachers really helped raise my children with me. I want to say thank you to the materials fee program. My husband and I were fortunate enough to buy a house in Brookline about 15 years ago, but before that, we were able to send our children to Heath School through the materials fee program. Matthias and Lucy, my children, went on to attend Brookline High School and have both now graduated from college. Actually, Lucy just graduated last month. That was an incredible milestone for us. This connection to the community through my children only strengthened my teaching and my devotion to Brookline Public Schools. And finally, I want to say thank you to the Brookline Education Foundation and to the Lawrence School PTO, who funded and supported my every single, and I mean every single, interest and need as a teacher. So just wanted to say we've got about 120 years of institutional memory here, right, the four of us, and we are happy to teach you all we know. Thank you.
Next up, we have Mindy Paulo, our K-12 EL coordinator, who will make remarks for Emily Rahm.
It's an honor to be here today to share some remarks from my dear friend and colleague, Emily Rahm. Emily immigrated to the United States from Belarus in 1992 with her husband and 2 daughters in hopes of experiencing a better life. She had heard from some friends that the schools in Brookline were welcoming to Russian immigrants and that the Russian students received English support where they were able to function in general education classes. Yes, because of teachers like Emily, Brookline schools are renowned around the world. During her time in Brookline, Emily has worked as a paraprofessional in our former Russian bilingual program at the Pierce School. After a year in this position, she became a full-time teacher in the Russian bilingual program also at Pierce. As the need for a Russian bilingual program declined due to decreased enrollments, Emily joined the English language team at Lawrence in 2003. Since then, she has prepared numerous lessons centered on the needs of her students. She has read countless books, sang many songs, and instilled a love of reading in each one of her students. She has designed beautiful and highly interactive and engaging units that made children want to be in her class. Her favorite moments are when she gets to share her beautiful children's book collections with her students. She especially loves finding wordless books and enjoys listening to her students create the words to the stories of their own. During my visits, I would see children experiencing the joy of learning. She has successfully transitioned through change after change from state and federal regulations, and she's done it all with tremendous patience, flexibility, and creativity. Emily walks into school every day with a smile and has always been a gentle source of support and comfort to those in her presence. Emily will often remind those around her, everything's going to be all right, don't worry. I personally needed to hear that many, many times. When Emily wasn't teaching, you could find her playing the piano. Emily still loves piano and teaches music theory outside of school. When she retires at the end of this year, she hopes to open a music school for children who want to learn how to play. Wherever she is, Emily shares her love for learning and music. She is always positive and has embraced all that life has to offer. Over the last 20 plus years, I have had the privilege of working with and learning from Emily. Brookline is a better place because of you, Emily. She has encouraged and inspired hundreds of students who are now making their mark across the world. On behalf of the public schools of Brookline, I would like to thank Emily for dedicating 30 plus years to the students, families, and colleagues of this community. Not only are you achieving this milestone, but you're also retiring. And may your retirement be filled with health, laughter, love, and music. You have been a gift to each and every one of us, and you will be so dearly missed. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I have so many thanks to say because as Mindy mentioned, we came here really as immigrants, political refugees, and but we knew through some Russian sources that Brookline schools are the best and the only place to live is Brookline and the only schools to go to send your kids to Brookline. And that's what we did. So my kids went to Runkle School together with Helen's kids, same time, and then to high school. And I was working as an accompanist at Pierce, and then that my Russian friend Lilia Levitina, who I have to thank, told me that they're going to open Russian bilingual program, and that's how it all started. But then one little thing, I really didn't know that much English. So through Brookline schools, I went to Simmons College and got this degree in applied linguistics and made my master's in education and teaching. So all of this is through Brookline. We still are Brookline residents, and now my grandkids are going to Brookline schools. So I hope to be invested. I have many people to thank, and I overall think that I was really, really been blessed here in America with people like Mindy and people like Kay Polga, who hired me with no language, and James Walsh, and my principal at Pierce, Chris Field, and Dominique. So many people. It's a really, really long list. But thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Next up, we have Josh Paris, who will speak on behalf of Debbie Winkler from BHS.
Hi. Thank you, Dr. Guillory. Thank you, school committee members. I am honored to be here on this wonderful event to say a few words about Debbie Winkler, who I have known for a long time. I just was reminded a few minutes ago that Debbie has been living in Brookline her entire life, basically, and went to Runkle School as a student, now lives in the house where she grew up, right? And has started her own family in that same house. Debbie started working in Brookline in the middle school, and then soon thereafter moved on to the high school. I want to congratulate you, Debbie, on 31 years, I believe, actually, of teaching in the Brookline Public Schools. It's hard to believe you started teaching when you were 10 years old. I remember when I interviewed for a teaching position at Brookline High School in the spring of 2000. I was really excited about the possibility of teaching in Brookline, and also pretty nervous, especially when I was brought into the math office for the interview and was faced with about 900 teachers and administrators staring at me. At least it felt like 900. I'm not really good at math. Anyways, as I sat down, each of the members of the interview committee introduced themselves. And when it got to Debbie, she said her name and smiled, displaying that calming demeanor that serves her so well with her students and with adults as well. And so I said to myself, this is a person with whom I want to work. And I also said to myself, I know this person. It turns out that I had met Debbie a few years before because her husband, David, who's sitting right there, is the brother of one of my best friends from high school. And as I made this connection and I saw Debbie's smiling face, I instantly relaxed. So much so that I guess I did okay at that interview and have been in Brookline ever since. So I guess really I owe my teaching career in Brookline to you, Debbie. Thank you for that. I started as a colleague then for 7 years with Debbie. And then when I took on the position of math department coordinator, I worked as her, sort of as the head of the math department. But anyways, in that time, I have been so impressed with Debbie's creativity and what she brings to the classroom. Debbie is an innovator. Even though an experienced teacher, she was always still 31 years into teaching, striving to improve her practice. For example, a number of years ago, the math department dug into the complexities of grading. Debbie was a leading influence in these discussions. As a result, she adopted the practice of standards-based grading in her classes and has been fine-tuning that assessment strategy in those classes ever since, and has been a leading voice in the discussions we continue to have around grading in the math department. 2 years ago, we did a lot of professional development and thinking in the math department centered on building a thinking classroom in mathematics. Once again, Debbie jumped right into this work and immediately adopted a number of the ideas from the text into her teaching practice. Debbie is, I have seen Debbie teach multiple times, and every time I go in her room, the students are actively doing mathematics. And this building a thinking classroom talks about having students working, standing up on vertical surfaces. And Debbie just jumped right into that. She bought these poster thingies that go on the wall and which students can write on and then get erased. And she mixes up students and has them working there in different groups, pretty much every classroom. So it was just amazing to me how quickly she just, took to this newish idea, even though she had been teaching for so long. Debbie is always on the lookout for ideas to help her students learn math more effectively. On a personal and social level, Debbie is so nurturing and caring for everyone, students and faculty alike. She hosts our math department celebration, one of which we had yesterday, at her house at the end of every year, and we wouldn't have it any other way. We get to see Debbie, as a homeowner and as a leader in her family as much as she is a leader in the math department. Debbie is such a gracious host, much as she is a gracious person. So Debbie, I thank you for all you have given to the students of Brookline during these past 31 years. They and we will forever be grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh. And thank you guys. This is so nice that you recognize this milestone. I really appreciate it. And sometimes it's amazing to me that I still really love what I do after 30 years. I've never been bored, and I think about teaching all the time when I'm not in the classroom. And I'm grateful that I found something that I love to do so early on. But I couldn't do it without support. And so there are a few people I do want to thank. One of you was mentioning Jim Walsh, which reminded me, when I started, he was the superintendent here, and I didn't think this was odd, but he knew my name. And I didn't realize until how did he how did he know my name? That was really impressive. And, you mentioned you were hired without certain certifications or language, or I was hired without being certified. Chris Martez at the time was the director of personnel, and it was different. They had a program where you could start teaching and become certified. So Brookline really made it possible for me to join as a young teacher. I can't not thank the math department, the teachers in the math department. I can't say enough good things about them. I've never met a group of people who are so smart and funny and collaborative and fun. Every course that I've taught at the high school, which, over the years has ranged pretty much, I've taught every grade and every level, although not every single course. And the team, whoever I'm working with, they will give me all of their materials. They will let me sit in on their classes. They'll let me have lunch if I just need adult conversation during the day. If I'm not working through lunch, they're amazing. And I know I don't have to say this, but the Halloween at Brookline High School, the math department really took that by storm. So it's a unique department. And Josh too, as the head of the department, I have to say, he lets us be creative in our classroom. And I remember several years ago, I experimented with flipped classroom, and it says something about Josh that it didn't even occur to me to ask permission to do. I just thought I want to try this, and the environment is just so, we have things to teach, but we're free to teach in a way that we like and try new things. Before I taught at the high school, I taught at some elementary schools, and it's funny, David, this is the second time in a span of a couple months that a former student has taken me totally by surprise. I had dental work that I did not plan, and I went in and, and the dentist says, you were my teacher. But my colleagues in the middle school were phenomenal. I bounced around a little bit at the beginning, and then I spent 3.5 years at Baker. And to this day, one of my closest friends is Susan Balo, who I met 25 years ago when I was teaching there. I should probably thank my family, my children, for the long hours, and not only are they patient and understanding, they frequently ask to help in the form of, can I grade papers? I'd be happy to. And of course, my husband, who, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have been able to do any of this. He does more than his fair share in the child care and home care departments, and he listens and just supports me in whatever I want to do. So thank you so much.
We want to thank all of our 30-year honorees and thank all of you for joining us for this celebration tonight. With that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Chair Perlman.
So if you look carefully at today's docket, we talk about how we are recognizing teachers, staff, and members with 30 plus years of service. And there is someone else here in this room who has 30 plus years of service to the public schools of Brookline, and that person is school committee member Helen Charlupski, who is now entering her 32nd year. First elected in 1992, Ms. Charlupski is in her 32nd year serving on the school committee and for the public schools of Brookline. Her children graduated from Runkle School and Brookline High School. I reached out to various people with whom you served. Nancy Heller, unfortunately, is not able to make it tonight, but she gave me some remarks that she wanted me to deliver on her behalf. She discussed how something that was very notable is your passion for early childhood development and the BEAT program. She recalls quite fondly working with you in the trenches and various override and debt exclusion campaigns going as far back as 1994. She talked about co-chairing the high school project with you in 2018. And above all, who you are as a person. Also, well, twice. So, also, she commented on who you are as a person, that you're very kind, informative, always have good humor. Next, I spoke with Judy Myers, who is actually with us on Zoom, and she's going to deliver remarks herself.
Well, Helen, here I am, and I do want to apologize because more than anything, I would like to be there tonight. We don't, you know how much notice we get for these things. So just imagine that and subtract a few hours. And here I am, but at least I'm so glad to be able to celebrate you on Zoom. And so often in these things, well, at least with school committee members, we roast them as well. But there's nothing to roast Helen about because she is one of the most gracious and kind people I have ever met. So what I'm going to do is just take you back in time to a few landmarks for me, which isn't necessarily capturing everything about Helen. It's impossible, you know, it's 30 years. Nobody is on the school committee for 30 years, but to understand Helen, you got to understand her dedication. And one of the things that Helen has always done, and her passion for early childhood and all that, she could not have done so much of what she's done for the children of this state without being on school committee. So Helen literally sacrificed herself, her time, her family to stay on school committee so she could not only do what she does for the Brookline schools, but for all the children in this state. So going back, I first met Helen as a Runkle School parent. We worked together, and I think I should have gotten a clue of what was to come, because the first project I ever worked on with Helen was the Runkle School Library. So I should have, I guess that was my introduction to Helen's skills at renovating buildings and spaces within schools. And just so you know that not only, of course, has Helen been instrumental in the renovation of almost all our Brookline schools by this time, because she loves bricks and mortar, she also loves to decorate. So I had my first glimpse of this when we did the Runkle Library, and believe me, Helen stopped at nothing. We did all the plans for the renovation, but Helen insisted on being intimately involved in the decorating and making it a space, a warm and welcoming space that children would enjoy for years to come, of course, until they renovated Runkle and took down our beautiful library and created a new one. But she was amazing because she said, look, we have a budget. Why not make it the most that it can be? And that takes work. You don't just turn it over to someone else. You put, you dig in your heels and go to work. And that's what Helen did. So some years later, in Helen's second sort of, I guess it was 8 years into her tenure, but really for her second decade on the school committee, I was elected to the school committee in 2000, and Helen was the chair when I was elected. And so she actually was my mentor on the school committee. In those days, at least back then, she didn't assign someone else. She took the time to mentor me as a new member, took me out to lunch, spent real time making me understand what the role of a school committee member was. This was invaluable for me. And I would just say that what she probably taught me more than anything, I'm not sure I always followed it, but she taught me to listen as well as speak, and certainly to listen before I speak. I will just tell you that she confided that during the whole first year of school, her whole first year of school committee, she never spoke. You'd never know that now because obviously she found her voice very soon after that and became a leader of all of us. But she did stress the importance of learning from others. There are people on the school committee and people on the staff of both the school department and the teachers and everyone else around you who know so much more about everything than you do, that your best step forward is to listen to what they have to say, and then from that, you will become wiser and you will have more to offer. I always took that to heart and I'll never forget it. So I will just say that going from there, that I spent 12 years as a colleague. And when I left, at least in terms of Helen, I feel that I have never left. We have had a friendship for all 30 years and more. And something very special and dear to me. We have been through thick and thin and shared happy and sad times together. And basically, Helen, I thank you for everything you've done and will continue to do for the schools of Brookline. And if I were there now, I would get up and give you a big hug, but it's going to be a virtual hug for today.
Thank you, Judy. A big virtual hug to you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
So marching on in time, I also spoke with Rebecca Stone. Rebecca Stone's not able to be here this evening, but she also gave me some of her highlights on you, including that no one is more deserving of being honored for your service to the school committee and to the public schools of Brookline, that you are instrumental in bringing about full-day kindergarten, that you are integral in supporting the BRIGHT program and mental health initiatives to support our kids, that you receive the credit and the blame for tile selections and wall colors. No one has such a passion for fenestration. And that you know how to disagree agreeably, that you are vastly knowledgeable, that you're always willing to engage, and that when you make points, they're important and on target. And then that brings us to more recent years. So I've actually had a slight connection with you since the year 2000. It's your signature on my high school diploma. And little did I know back then that 18 years later, I would be joining you on the school committee. And when I first came on, I immediately noticed your collegiality, your deep repository of institutional knowledge, your expertise on all things MSBA and capital. You're a living Rolodex. You might as well be the president of Who's Who in DESE, EDCO, the MASC, Massachusetts School Department executives. I have served with you on 3 different superintendent search committees. Hopefully, there's going to be no need for that for a very long time. And I was always very impressed by just how much you knew and how methodical you were and insightful. You're an excellent judge of skill and character. Your passion and dedication to the schools and to youth in general is very clear, and it's very remarkable and impressive. You're a pleasure to serve with. 31 years down, many, many more to go. You're maybe about halfway there. And on that note, we would like to give you this framed thank you for your dedication. So it says, to Helen Charlupski, with sincere gratitude and thanks for over 30 years of dedication and service to the Brookline School Committee and the public schools of Brookline. And it's signed by many of us. And Andy's got a little more.
Oh my God. Oh, this will be beautiful in the garden. Thank you. I think I may be speechless, but not really. I just felt like this is your life. I mean, I just feel like, wow.
To be clear, this is obviously not a farewell. It's not a retirement. You're only about halfway through. You're going for the record. I spoke to Nancy Heller about that earlier. She says she really wants you to go all out, get that record for longest tenure. Even if you think you're going to retire, you'll probably get voted in via write-in campaign. So keep on going.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for, I mean, it's amazing. Thank you.
And thank you to all of you who came today to celebrate Miss Matrano and Mundell and Rahm and Winkler. Very impressive accomplishments and tenures for the four of you and for everyone who has been supporting you as well, because everyone is a product of their families and broader support systems. So thank you to everybody who's here.
One other thing, I realized that I started this 30-year event in 2000, I think it was, or maybe a little bit before that. I never thought that I would be one of the recipients. So thank you. Thank you for thinking of it.
All right, so on that note, we will now move on to the superintendent's report.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see so many of you here with us in person as well as virtually. We have quite a few students that are joining us in the room as well as on the screen. So I'm going to try to clip through this portion with rapid speed, but just to pictorially look at where we've been this year. So we'll walk through some of our celebrations of 23-24, share some important dates, and then get to our spotlight on excellence. So we start off, we have the Heath School in the room, so I won't say much about this photo. They're going to take the cake there. But what I tried to do was assemble photos that we've taken over the course of the year just to allow you all to take in the richness that's happening in our schools each and every day. You've heard educators speak tonight already about the creativity, the joy, the passion they bring to the table. So I won't try to speak more than that, but allow you to take these things in pictorially. We have science fairs. We have celebrating our breakfast. We have our Pierce School, kindergarten, Brookline Day event that they share, lots of artwork. So I hope I captured something from each department here and each school. A safe rides to school, our DPW day, upper elementary kids working with lower elementary kids, efforts on sustainability, celebrating our work in our libraries. Looking at our high school, their physics, celebrating their physics projects, many of the culturally rich experiences that our students have, our many sporting events, and then highlights from our school committees, kicking off our strategic planning events. And again, just another walkthrough of the classroom experiences. And so this is my second year, but at the end of the year, I have hundreds of photos that I have to go back through to try to select out a small sampling of what's happening in our schools. And I'm just always amazed at what our kids are experiencing and the thoughtfulness that their educators bring to the table with those experiences. Many of the arts and crafts, that work that's happening. Our kids take so much initiative and so much pride in their work, and so it's always amazing, even down in our BEEP classroom where the kids are dressing up as well, many of the celebrations that occur over the course of the year as well, that partnership, and then much of the music. I'm so impressed with the music work that happens in our district. And then many of the celebrations that occur, our Metco events, the cultural experiences that we take advantage of in and around Boston as well as Massachusetts. Again, it's just so much to say, the rich programming that occurs at the high school. And with that, we turn, Monday is Juneteenth. Again, both the district offices and schools will be closed. Juneteenth is celebrated every year on June 19th to commemorate the end of slavery in the United States. And this year, as with last year, the town of Brookline invites the community To honor Juneteenth with the Freedom March and Celebration Monday, the march will begin at Ruffin Ridley and proceed to the Brookline Avenue Playground, and the march will begin at 10 o'clock. The celebration begins at 11. And our PSB Food Services team will begin providing free meals starting Wednesday, June 5th. The serving times are 10 to 11 and 12 to 1. And there will be a kickoff event July 6th from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Brookline Avenue Playground. And with that, I want to get to our Spotlight on Excellence for tonight. Tonight, we shine the spotlight on excellence on the Lincoln Middle School Student Council. This year, Middle School Student Council has been involved with school happenings such as the morning announcements, grade band, school community meetings, planning of the February Spirit Day and Field Day, which just took place yesterday. Principal Brian Denizio and School Adjustment Counselor Erica Polanski join us this evening, along with a few middle school student council members, sixth graders Reed Glover, Dylan Callagher, and 8th grader Darla Savage. They will be sharing some of the exciting work that they've been doing on behalf of the Lincoln School student body. And without further ado, I present Mr. Denizio.
Thank you, Dr. Guillory. Thank you, school committee, for having us here this evening. I'm really excited to share the great work that's been ongoing from our middle school student council. Fundamentally, what this was about for us was like giving our middle school students an opportunity to lead. And I think too about the idea that there's a lot that's wonderful about K-8s, right? About the idea that you have a group of students with you for, in some cases, 9 years. But to really capitalize on those things, you do need to dedicate some time and some thinking and planning to do it. And it's most fruitful when it's a thing that the kids are leading on and not a thing that adults are maybe doing to them. And so the work we've been doing with our student council this year has been about giving them some voice and some opportunity, quite literally, to take on leadership roles in our school. So got a presentation we want to share with you just about some of the things that our middle school student council has been working through this year. Give me just 1 second to get our presentation up and running. Okay. So, right, fundamentally, this is about the idea of how we're working to build a K-8 community. I think both due to some of the ways in which we had to be and do school due to COVID, and then just also the fact that it's very easy in a big school across a wide grade level bands to kind of get into either grade level teams or grade level kind of, worlds of, well, we're the K-2 folks, we're the 3 to 5 folks, right? This was meant to break down those, those walls and to really capitalize on the fact that we have kiddos for such a long academic career with us there at Lincoln. So I guess, like Dr. Guillory said, we have here this evening sixth grader Reed Glover, as well as sixth grader Dylan Kelleher, eighth grader Darla Savage, and then really thrilled to be joined by our school adjustment counselor, Erica Polanski. I'm looking to see if I have with me here either Reed or Dylan or Darla. If you're there. Yes, there we go, friends. Thank you, Reed, for turning on that camera. And there's Dylan. Yeah, get some shine. Go ahead, put that camera on. So I'm going to move through the slides. They've been working, and really these are just like the little presentation Dr. Guillory was just doing, kind of painting a picture with, with pictures as well as the words of our students. So I'm going to turn it over now to myself for a second. Well, I talked through some, so some of the key events and actions we did this year was bringing back buddy classrooms. Buddy classrooms is the idea of, matching together a older kid class and a younger kid class and getting together intentionally for about a half hour, doing an activity together. This is where we capitalized on having the School Culture and Climate Committee do a lot of the planning work, right? Like I said, capitalizing on, actively engaging and being a K to 8 community is a thing you got to work at, right? And so we didn't want to add more to teachers' plates. So we were, as a committee, literally planning the activities, planning the read alouds, making slideshows, making videos to make it as turnkey as possible to get kids together, engaging together. So what you see here is actually some the themes of our buddy classroom activities were always about our core values at Lincoln: curiosity, creativity, and compassion. And so this was an activity we did this winter about creativity. I, with the help of one of our literacy specialists, recorded a video making snowflakes. And the idea then was that our buddies, and this was a group of 7th graders with a group of 2nd graders, got together and designed and created snowflakes, right? They went through and kind of learned about the different cuts and the different impact that those cuts would make in designs. And then they were put together, and you can see on the right side of the screen, we stitched those together to be a part of the set piece and to be a part of the design around the Lincoln School Theater for the spring presentation of Frozen Junior. And so the idea here was, again, just getting kids together across grades, having fun, and putting, I think in particular, our middle school kiddos in a position to be, to have some leadership and to have some authority in the school. And I think it was really gratifying to me and so many other teachers when, perhaps you see kids passing each other in the hallway and, well, they're not siblings. Why are they saying hi? It's like, oh, well, they're classroom buddies. And that's really gratifying to see. I'm going to turn it over to Dylan now. Here's what you see here is a shot of a group of friends from Student Council helping out with morning announcements. Take it away, Dylan.
Hi. At a Spirit Day Planning Committee meeting, we were brainstorming ideas to increase school spirit. We came up with the idea of having kids helping Mr. D'Initzio with the morning announcements. We decided a group of us would announce the weather, the lunch, and the holidays and birthdays, and sometimes tell a joke. We did this because generally people talk during the announcements and don't really pay attention. Kids saying the announcements made it feel special and made kids want to listen. I think having us helping with the announcements was like a small thing, but had a big impact on the school community.
Thanks, Dylan. And believe me, not only did I appreciate the help, I also appreciated the jokes, which were typically in that dad joke genre of comedy. So thank you. So next was community meeting. Reed's going to tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so community meetings were, I think, once a month-ish, where groups of students and teachers would meet in our auditorium in like kindergarten through 2nd grade groups and 3rd through 5th and 6th through 8th. And every time we had one, there would be a theme. So just like how we had in Buddies, our core values: creativity, curiosity, and compassion. And then they would also they would relate to our buddies. So like one week was compassion, and we read a book with our buddies about that. And then another week we did creativity. And then, like Mr. D'Initzio said, we made snowflakes. But yeah, and as well as this like time that we can like talk about core values, it's also like where announcements, like special dates and whatever, can be shared, and classes, like this picture here, can share kind of what they're doing in their classes. So like other grades and other classes know what everybody's up to. And I think community meetings really give everybody a chance to see just kind of not just what their class and what their grade are up to and what kind of fun stuff they get to do, but what kind of stuff is new in past grades and what kind of stuff they could be looking forward to.
Reed. And then the next one has to do with Spirit Day.
Yeah, so this one, it kind of took a lot of thought when in our Spirit Day group. We needed to do a Spirit Day that could be inclusive for everybody. And so we just kind of ended up picking everybody wear their favorite color. This was kind of like a fun way to see what other people's favorite color was, and also just like a fun thing that we got to announce and do for everybody. We also did, everybody voted on an exit song that we played over the loudspeaker, I think on the Friday before April break. And it was, I worried about it, I think. And yeah, that was a really fun thing that we got to do.
You know, it was democratic because I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys. But that didn't get all the votes. And so it turned out to be, I ain't worried about it. Thank you, Reed. Next big thing, and this was just yesterday, was Lincoln School Field Day. This was the second annual, so now it's a tradition, field day that we've had going on at Lincoln. And really last year, like, you know, she'll tell you there was a committee, and there was a committee, but Erica, this was Erica's idea, right? And she, through her sheer competence and planning, convinced me of how we could pull off a field day on the grounds at Lincoln. And then this year, it was really kind of a generative thing where we incorporated so much feedback from staff, but also more importantly, kids. And I'm going to turn it over to Darla to talk about that a little bit.
Okay, hello everybody. So these past few months, the Field Day Committee has been very busy creating surveys for the middle school, finding age-appropriate activities for each grade level. We created a t-shirt design competition and also a soundtrack and a school chant. Also, we were just looking for ways to incorporate more Lincoln spirit. And like Mr. Denizio just said, we had Field Day yesterday and it was a huge success. Many people had fun, and it really brought people together. Thank you.
Thanks, Darla. Erica, I wonder if you could talk about some of the other ideas that kids had, both based on last year and then also just ideas for this year.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. Again, being part of student council is such a joy. It's like, this is the fact that this is my day today is amazing. So as far as elevating student voice, it was really important to kind of hear what worked well last year and what should we change this year. So that took a lot of survey creations. Everyone was very patient and dealt with my technology learning curve. But one of the big changes was hearing from middle schoolers, okay, we really like to run stations for the younger students, but we would also like to have a part of the day that we can just enjoy ourselves. So that was one big change that we took into account this year. And they also really were, the Field Day Committee for Student Council did all of the theme choice. They created a song playlist and every student was able to add their song choice. So it's just really about increasing that sense of school belonging, creating traditions that we'll have for years to come, just sparking joy in general, and really bringing together all of the grade bands. So it was a really good time.
Thank you. And so just the last thing I wanted to share is actually, this was a pretty unique piece of Field Day yesterday. So one of our staff members has a drone and was able to, culminating event of Field Day was we got everybody together in the front circle. You can see the white t-shirts, right? Those are our middle school students. And they were wearing those white t-shirts because in addition to doing Field Day themselves in the afternoon, they were leading the games, leading the activities, or being captains based with K-5 homerooms. And so you can see that's the entirety of the Lincoln School gathered in the front circle, waving to our drone for a photo taken from high above. We wrapped up Field Day yesterday right about 2 o'clock, and it was only then that we started to feel the first raindrops. So Lincoln Field Day was very popular, not just here, but also in the weather. And I'm just so proud of the work that the group of kids did across the year, but also to plan such a fun and engaging day for a range of kids, right? The idea that you have to come up with activities that are fun and engaging for, kids who are 5 and 6 years old, up through kids who are, 13, 14 years old. But they did it, right? And they also created opportunities for just little bits of leadership and little bits of connection to be going on all throughout the day. So I'm just so proud of the work that, our student council has been able to do this year. They've made it so much easier for me to accomplish one of my core goals, which is to help foster and build a really strong K-8 community. And it very much wouldn't be possible without their voice and without their leadership and without the help from staff like Ms. Polanski and Alejandra Traum and Heather Pino, who have been the facilitators of our middle school student council this year. I am lucky I'll have friends like Reed and Dylan hanging out for 2 more years. I'm so Darla only has like another 2-ish days with me, but I want to thank her in particular for a fantastic career at Lincoln and for spending time with us tonight. So I will I'll wrap there. Thanks, everybody.
Any questions or comments? No? All right, Dr. Guillory.
So the Public Schools of Brookline Spotlight on Excellence is awarded to William H. Lincoln Schools Middle School Council in recognition of your school-wide leadership that serves to foster a kinder, more inclusive school community and to create a sense of school belonging. Congratulations again.
All right, and with that, we will now go to our next agenda item. So thank you for joining us. You're free to stay if you want. We understand if you want to call it an evening.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
You too. Next up, we have a sad farewell and thank you to outgoing Senior Director for Educational Equity, Janae Utaro, and outgoing Director of Facilities and Operations, Matt Gillis.
So as Chair Perlman said, this is both sad on both occasions to be losing Janae as well as Matt from our organization. And I'll say what I've said before to top talent that we have. The door is open still for you to change your mind or reconsider, but I do understand the importance and respect the decisions that folks have made. Janae, I remember when coming to Brookline, she was on my interview team, and the questions that she posed to me were around educational equity as such. And so that stuck with me. That interview committee, I think Josh talked about that with Ms. Winkler at the high school. But I remember that just as clear as it was yesterday. And then to have the opportunity to work closely with her for these past 2 years has just been phenomenal. And Janae, I just want to thank you for your courage, your leadership in the organization, and the work that you've been able to champion for so many. And so with that, I will pass the mic to others for commentary.
Who else has some comments? Helen?
I'm really going to miss you, Janae. I think you have brought so much to Brookline in the years that you've been here, and I think it's 13, if I'm not mistaken, or is it more? Huh? 15? 15, sorry. But it's been a pleasure every time I've been on a committee with you or been involved in some aspect with you. You're thoughtful, you're just a wonderful person to work with, and I'm really going to miss you, and I hope maybe you'll reconsider. But thank you for all your hard work in Brookline.
Anyone else? So I'll note, I most remember the work that you did with us at the school committee workshop on equity, and I know that it was just a brief introduction because it's a very complex subject, but I felt that you presented it in a very digestible, welcoming manner that made each of us really comfortable to discuss what's a very difficult issue and to dive right in. And I'm glad that though it appears you're leaving, you're still committed to continuing that work with us at our subsequent workshop that's going to be in July. And I'm sure that my colleagues and I really appreciate that. Anyone else? Stephen?
Thanks, David. Janae, I think I'm really upset that you're leaving. I think you're a really extraordinary educator and a really extraordinary advocate for equity. I think you have a really deep knowledge of the theory and practice of equity that you brought to work every day, and your ideas and vocabulary about equity in theory and practice have really impacted my own, and I really appreciate that personally. I just want to say more broadly and briefly, if you'll forgive me, Janae, as I said in the last school committee meeting, we've sat through presentations on disproportionality in the past year, on disproportionality in academic achievement, in SPED referrals, in socio-emotional learning, in discipline, in referrals to leveled courses, among other topics. And we know that this is evidence of structural racism and that this is a systemic problem and it requires a systemic solution. And the Office of Educational Equity is put in the position of leading the charge in coming up with systemic solutions. And either we're serious about having systemic solutions to this systemic problem or we're not. And if we're losing someone as strong and excellent as Janae, then I worry. So I want to say, on the occasion of your leaving, Janae, that I feel that I need to be an advocate for an expanded Office of Educational Equity going forward, because I don't think we can afford to have educators and advocates like you leave our Office of Educational Equity. So I hear this as a warning to Brookline that if we're serious about tackling the serious systemic problem, then we need to staff your office so that we don't burn passionate, brilliant people like you out. So I want to thank you very sincerely and very personally for the work you've done. I ask your forgiveness for this soapbox, but I mean it truly.
Thank you.
Natalia?
Janae, we didn't get a chance to interact in this capacity, but I have gone to some of your trainings as a parent, and I don't know if you remember the day after I was elected, I bumped into you and I sent you an email because I was so excited about the possibility of working with you because your reputation really is phenomenal. And I know so many parents, so many people who have reached out to say what a huge loss it is. And I know my peers here who have actually worked with you know really what a loss it is. And I want to thank Stephen for, saying that we will try to do better so that no one else is put in this situation, and wish you the best of luck, because if you're as exceptional as I have seen you be, and as we know you will do exceptional things, and maybe one day you return to Brookline, or maybe one day you can help us become the system that I guess didn't serve you right in your role. But congratulations and best of luck moving forward.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else? All right. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
And love, and everyone will miss you hugely. We've been so lucky to have you leading us. It's so much. Oh, sorry.
Janae,
We can't
sorry.
hear online.
Sorry about that. Hi, Janae. It's Susan Balow from Baker. I'm going to start again. Forgive me. Everyone, Janae, has been so blessed to have your leadership. And when we read your letter last week, we had deep and profound respect for you and understanding and sadness. And I have been able to work with you planning PD for our PDA day, and you're just such a bright light of clarity and goodness and optimism in this very hard work. And speaking as a white educator, you always empowered me to ask the right questions. And, it's going to be impossible to fill your shoes. So thank you very much. And please stay in touch. We love you.
David, could I just say one more quick thing?
Sure.
I meant to also celebrate your successes. I didn't mean to only just focus on the bitterness of your loss. I also just wanted to celebrate the fact that you put together BEAD to focus on one of our huge problems, which is hiring and retaining educators of color. The fact that you put together CARE, which is a thriving community itself. The fact that you are constantly dealing with a zillion specific episodes, like you're the one who's facing those complaints. You are the one who's conducting and putting together all the trainings. You're facing so many of the specific day-to-day problems, putting together the work and the solutions also. There's a lot to celebrate from the work that you've done over the past 2 years in the Office of Educational Equity as well. So I don't want to just sound the alarm. I also want to say that a lot of progress has happened under your leadership, and I want to thank you for that too.
Nancy?
I apologize for not being there, and I'm sorry because I wanted to be there. And I debated whether or not I was going to speak because I knew I was going to be sad. Janae, all I can say is thank you. Thank you for everything that you did. Just being here. All of us felt better because you were here. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for every single thing that you've done. I'm very, very sorry for us as a town. I'm very, very sorry for us as a school system because you are leaving. And you made us better. You lifted us all up and you made us better. And Brookline was better because of you. So I wanted to say thank you. Wherever you're going, lucky them. So thank you for everything that you did. I'm sorry I'm crying on camera, but I wanted to say thank you. And if we ever have the opportunity to get you back, I hope that we do. And just wish you very, very well. And please, if we can ever do anything as a school committee and as your friend to help you, please know that we are here. We will always be here for you. Okay?
Thank you, Nancy.
Jay, is there anything you want to say? Just give you an opportunity to speak if you'd like.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for your kind words. I so appreciate it. I have been feeling the last week or so like this heartache of joy. I just have so much love for my colleagues and parents and students and just all of the amazing people I've been able to work with over 15 years. And this means a great deal to me. I so appreciate all of your words. I think we sometimes throw around the word love. I truly love Brookline. I love all of you. I will be close by. My husband works at Driscoll. I can't really go. I was telling Lisa, I think it was yesterday, this has been a third of my life working here. And so my love is deep. I was thinking about, I think it's Wes Jackson who said, if your life's work takes a lifetime to complete or accomplish, then it's not big enough. And this is my lifetime's work. This is my life's work. It's a passion for me. And I'm looking forward to sort of trying my hand at similar sort of work in another place, but Brookline will always be a part of my heart. And will always be close in my heart. So I'm just so grateful. And I really am hoping, to your point, Stephen, that, we can be who we say we want to be in Brookline and that we can commit to what that work actually looks like. And I have a lot of hope and belief in this community that we can do that. So thank you all so much.
So thank you, Janae, very much. As you can see, you're very much beloved here. Everyone wishes you well, wants you to stay here or come back here very soon. So thank you for everything that you've brought to Brookline over your years here.
Thank you.
Now, there's someone else we would like to honor. He's not able to join right now. Perhaps Helen can maybe deliver some remarks, as I think you probably work the closest with him amongst us here, and that's Matt Gillis.
Yeah, I would be happy to. I was actually thinking on Tuesday there's going to be a little get together here, and I was going to say some words, but I'm happy to say them now. Matt Gillis I'm sorry he's not joining us online, but he's been a joy to work with. He's always there, always ready to help. He's a problem solver who really tries to make things work. And as a director of operations, you need that kind of problem solver. Matt was here, I think, for about 6 years. Am I right? 7? Okay. I'm off a couple of years here and there. But from the beginning, he just dove right in and really helped us to make systems that work better and will benefit from for a long time. So thank you, Matt. I know you're not listening right now, but hopefully you'll get a little snippet of the tape so that you know how we feel about you.
All right, now we will move to our next agenda item, which is public comments. And our first speaker is Isabella de la Torre. Okay. So I'm being told that there will be 11 of you who are speaking all together. So Isabella de la Torre, Shenandoah Pon, Allison Kerr, Kristen Kenny, Colleen Boyle, Caitlin Robinson, Amanda Breckner, Marnie Weiss, Victoria Ridge, Cecilia Costanzo, Dominique Gagner, and Jessica Wender-Shubo.
It's part of one big message. Since we have a large group, we thought for continuity, we want to kind of 2-minute segments, but we'll be watching the time, and I believe we have 11 people signed up, so. So, I would like to say hello. My name is Amanda. I'm currently teaching Spanish at Baker to grades 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8.
You want to start over? Yes. Okay. Oh, sorry, the microphone was off. Hello, my name is Amanda, and I'm currently teaching Spanish at Baker to grades 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. I used to work between Runkle and Ridley, teaching grades 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Unlike my colleagues in other content areas, I have never had a classroom, and I have to change my location throughout the day, physically carrying all of my teaching materials with me. In order to accommodate all of my grade levels, I have to make 19 lesson plans per week. During the academic school year of 2021, I was using Seesaw, Google Classroom, and Canvas to teach my students remotely and in person. This job has become too mentally and physically demanding. I find myself wondering if any of my colleagues in other content areas would have ever been asked to do this. Would a middle school social studies teacher ever be asked to teach grades 2 through 8? Would a middle school math teacher ever be asked to make 19 lesson plans a week and teach on a cart? Would a 3rd grade classroom teacher ever be asked to teach upwards of 150 students a year? I often question, as a Latina educator, am I being provided the same opportunities as my colleagues to succeed? My students deserve the best. And when I am afforded the opportunity to succeed, my students succeed. Due to FTE shavings of the World Language Department, my job has changed often and quickly. Since 2020, I have been assigned to teach Spanish in 3 different schools, to almost all grade levels K through 8. In 3 short years, I have been assigned to teach Spanish to 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And Did I mention that throughout my career, I've never had my own classroom? I carry my classroom in a bag on my back. I change rooms throughout the building every 30 to 40 minutes. I make 19 lesson plans a week. I go from teaching 8-year-olds to teaching 14-year-olds in the span of 5 minutes while running across the building, and I grade my middle school students quarterly. These working conditions are the students' learning conditions. I would like to humbly request that the school committee and the superintendent immediately restore the FTEs that our program needs, and that you join us at the bargaining table so that we can work collaboratively to create the best learning conditions for our students. Providing Brookline students with equitable access to education means providing all of their teachers, regardless of content area, with equal opportunities to succeed. Please work with us to give the students of Brookline a top-notch world language education. Thank you.
I'm Shenandoah Pound. This is my 10th year working at the Runkle School teaching K through 4 Spanish. I know that you hear teachers ask for things all the time, and I imagine that on your side, it may feel like we are a bunch of complainers. No job is perfect, everyone has problems, a large system like Brookline. I know that you try to look at the big picture of the system and avoid involving yourselves in the minutia. I am begging you, we are in a crisis and we need your help. We've been asking our principals, we have asked our coordinator, we have tried to talk to the superintendent on many occasions. Betsy, you're a saint. We have worked with the Office of Teaching and Learning, and everyone tells us that only you can help us. We aren't just complaining. You mentioned how you don't want to burn out passionate people and you need to staff appropriately. We talked about retaining educators of color. We are your most diverse department. And yet, people on our team are choosing to move to other districts at record rates, even if it means a pay cut. People are taking unpaid leaves of absence because they fear the mental and physical well-being if they do not. Not just new teachers who maybe try it out, it's not the right fit, they go on to something else. No, I'm talking about experienced teachers who have spent 5, 10, maybe 15 years teaching in this district. People with families and bills to pay. They take with them all of their experience and professional development that you have paid for over the years. For context, on our team of roughly 25 people, in the last year, I can personally, just off the top of my head, count 5 who have left and 3 who have chose to take an unpaid leave of absence for the fall of this school year after seeing the workload that they'd be assigned because they knew they just couldn't physically do it. And that's probably an undercount because I'm, again, only counting off the top of my head. So that's people I personally knew, which in the age of Zoom meetings, I honestly don't know everyone on our team. Now this year, that means about a third of our world language classes are being taught by new hires or long-term subs, or even daily subs if they can't find someone who will even take the position at all. I don't know what fields you come from, but I want you to imagine working with a team where 1/3 of your staff was brand new and some have 0 experience in the field. I'm sure many of them are great teachers, but from experience, I can tell you that there is a huge learning curve and no one is at their best in their first year or even their second. Now the district has decided to make those untenable workloads, to cite one of those colleagues who left, the standard. In the last few weeks, those 3 people who were on leave this year have announced that they won't be returning, and at least 3 more people have also announced that they will not be returning. I know of at least 4 more who are actively interviewing elsewhere, and many more who are talking about it, myself included. Again, this is off the top of my head, people I know. And remember, there's only about 25 of us. That means that next year, the majority of our team will be brand new or have just 1 year of experience. Again, imagine that in any workplace or field. At one school, all 4 of the world language teachers that are there this year are not returning next year. They'll have an entirely new team. Think of the drain this has on our program and our school communities. Instead of creating resources and refining our curriculum, which you apparently want, considering that you paid for a consultant to make recommendations for this, Experienced teachers will be spending time onboarding new hires. Our coordinator can't support our team when so much of her time is taken up with the hiring process. The revolving door makes it impossible for teachers to form relationships with their students or colleagues. Is this what you want our schools to be? And is this what the voters wanted when they have voted multiple times to support our program? Now, under the guise of right sizing due to decreased enrollment, world language is being cut in a way that is far disproportionate to the reduction in sections. Schools that aren't losing any sections for next year are still having FTE cut, and the teachers left are being asked to do even more grade levels, more sections, more students. And as you heard from my colleague, it's already really high. My new proposed schedule would have me teach more minutes than any other teacher in my building, including K-5 classroom teachers. On top of this extreme teaching load, I would have to travel between 8 to 10 different classes a day in 6 different grade levels and on 4 different floors. Even the Office of Teaching and Learning agreed that this load is excessive, but alas, no way to move the pieces around to make it any better because you don't have enough pieces on the board. For visual reference, I made a mock-up of what my schedule next year might look like. Now, this is without factoring in conservatory, other specials, other shared staff, all those pieces that make scheduling really complicated. You can see there are no gaps. All these different colors are different grade levels. And again, this is across 4 different floors. So I might be going from one floor to another, quick break, to another, changing lesson plans on the fly, no time to check my lesson book, memorizing everything ahead of time, preparing all my materials, and again, carrying them with me. Now that there's even more, I actually have another, this is a real schedule I had a few years ago. You can see it's also pretty full, and all these yellow highlights are times where I didn't have enough time to get from the space I was teaching in one period to the other one. That's a lot of yellow highlights. And every single different shade is a different lesson plan that I'm teaching. And this was just 1 year. This was 2019, 2020. I have more. So this is with my past workload that has always counted as full-time. And now they're saying that they need to add an additional grade level. This makes no sense. Can you imagine yourself doing that? Can you imagine anyone doing that day after day, week after week, year after year? I'm in my 30s. I'd like to retire here. One day, I'll be in my 40s and my 50s and my 60s. Would you ask someone who's 60 years old to do this schedule and this physical burden? It's not right. I am calling on you to immediately restore the FTE that has been cut from our program this year and what you are anticipating to cut for the next year, and to finally sit down and bargain with us so that we don't have to keep coming back to beg you for help. Again, our department was in crisis even before these recent cuts, and I assure you it wasn't because we were underworked or overstaffed. I would be happy to sit down with you to help you understand our program, the value that we add, and our needs if you still have questions, but I cannot do that unless you will engage with us. I will now read a statement from my colleague, Caitlin Robinson. Caitlin cannot be here tonight as she is somewhere else and unable to be in 2 places at once. Attempting to squeeze more minutes out of teachers often results in schedules that expect just that we be in 2 places at once. There is nothing in the contract that prevents it. For the remainder of her time, Caitlin will demonstrate what the first few to several minutes of scheduled world language instruction look like in one class when the teacher is scheduled to be wrapping up a different class in a different location at the same time. These are instructional minutes, remember.
ask that if your school committee, if you're texting or engaged in something else other than listening to us, kindly give us your attention. Thank you.
My name is Colleen Boyle. I attended public schools of Brookline K-12, and I'm a resident of Brookline, and I'm finishing my 16th year teaching Spanish, all of which have been at Runkle School. Needless to say, I'm pretty invested in the public schools of Brookline. I love my job, and I show up every day for my students. I'm not just a Spanish teacher, I'm an integral part of the middle school community at Runkle, which Helen, if you're at graduation tomorrow, you will see. And I go above and beyond for all of my students. My schedule for next year will absolutely prohibit me from doing my best work and forming the strong relationships with my students and the community that I pride myself on. None of my colleagues in other departments are given more sections nor grade levels, even when their schedules are more open than mine. This is true for many of my world language colleagues across the district. Why is the world language department being targeted? What the district is doing and has done to our department over the past few years is quickly draining my passion and creating an impossible situation for students to receive the best instruction that they deserve. The community has passed 2 overrides to support a robust K-8 world language program, yet the central administration and school committee has seemingly cast these votes aside when making decisions regarding staffing and overall equity, a core value of Brookline, which ultimately diminishes our ability to provide the language program our students deserve and that the community supports. I'm here to ask that you, the school committee, and Dr. Guillory return the FTE you recently cut from the world language department so that I can continue to do my best and show up as my best, most passionate self every day for my students. We were told that if the recent override didn't pass, there would not be cuts to world language. Yet here we are with an override that passed and multiple positions being cut. Even in schools such as Runkle, where there were 0 decreases in sections and student enrollment, yet myself and my colleague Shen are being forced to take on additional sections and grade levels to teach in addition to our already full-time schedules. This is just unacceptable and disrespectful. Please do not continue to balance the budget on the backs of myself and my colleagues in the world language department. In order for our program to succeed and our students to continue to thrive, we need the FTE returned to our department for next year. Thank you.
My name is Isabella. I teach Spanish at FRR, and my daughter goes to Driscoll. I am here today because we have reached our bottom. Well, we actually hit our bottom 2, maybe 3 years ago, and this year we are just being pushed down even further past our bottom. Since 2019, Brookline has cut the equivalent of 5 teachers off of the world language workforce. 5 teachers cut since 2019. Take a look at this. How can this program perform at the level it was designed to? Why are you doing this to our program? I really wonder, why are you doing this to our program? Your most diverse group of educators, along with paraprofessionals, and you are disproportionately diminishing the workforce in our program, arguing that it is because of enrollment when it is not. The cuts that are being proposed disproportionately impact certain departments. The world language program has been the envy of neighboring towns. I wonder if you have ever heard a comment like, wow, you start world language in kindergarten? That's amazing. I wish my district did that too. The Brookline residents have voted time and again to support our program. And I think they have no idea how our ability to keep providing a high quality world language education is being undermined consistently, year over year. I wonder if that should be featured in one of the superintendent's weekly updates, because it is critical information that residents who have come out and voted to support a program like ours should know about. Don't you agree? As residents, wouldn't you like to know that this is happening? That despite the override being passed, and despite us being promised that world language was not part of the 1.8 million that was not included in the override, we still got the equivalent of 2.5 people cut out of our program just this year. And those staying are being asked to absorb the work of 2.5 people. And that is happening to the world language program year after year. It is just not right.
I want to believe that this is not being done on purpose, because it is just a matter of someone, a human eye, taking a look at what is being proposed and seeing that it's simply not right. It's what Shan showed. I truly believe that that's just what it takes, a human eye. We will give you copies of our schedules, and I hope that you have a chance to look at these examples and then ask yourself, would you like to have those schedules? Would you have time to prepare for all of these lessons? Would you be able to teach them with the level of energy and engagement that a world language class deserves? With all due respect, Dr. Guillory and members of the school committee, it is simply not doable. It is not doable. What you are asking from us is not okay. Year after year, you have to look at this. So I'm here, like my colleagues, I would like to humbly request that the school committee and the superintendent immediately restore the FTEs that our program needs in order to perform to the standards that it deserves. And that you join us at the bargaining table so that we can work collaboratively to create the best learning conditions for our students for the long run. Providing Brookline students with equitable access to education means providing all of their teachers with equal opportunities to succeed. Please work with us to give the students of Brookline the top-notch world language education that they deserve. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. I'm Marnie Weiss, also known as Madame Weiss. I'd really like to be home now, grading exams and doing my job. But instead, once again, I'm here fighting for it. I come to you as one of the most senior members of the Brookline World Language Department. I have served our students for the last 21 years. While I have been split between two schools at times, Baker School has been my home school for those 21 years. And I am now being told that I will have to leave my school. Brookline claims to value belonging and social emotional learning. And these happen when you build strong relationships with your students, with their families, and within your school. And the families of the Baker community are my families. Those students are my students, whom I love tremendously. Right now, with the shifts that are being made in FTEs, and as a result, our teaching assignments, the powers that be are dismantling the very things this district claims to value, the values of community and belonging that we hope to instill in our students. The resulting tumultuous turnover that we've experienced and continue to experience in our department breaks those ties that we work so hard to establish. I would love to share the impact of community and what being a part of the Baker community means to me with some very profound stories. However, this public forum is not the place for such a personal conversation. But when you uproot teachers to fill in an ever shrinking puzzle of FTEs in which the pieces for us just keep getting bigger and bigger, you destroy those hard-won communities. We lose those social emotional connections this school district claims to prioritize. As you keep degrading our working conditions and showing a lack of respect for us as educators and as human beings, you also deny us a sense of belonging. We are often excluded from our teams at our schools due to scheduling. We are in an information deficit about our students. And as you continue to suck the lifeblood out of us by asking us to teach even more classes and for the same salary, we feel less and less that we belong here in Brookline. Just look at the number of world language teachers who have resigned this year and last year combined. This year, 3 out of 5 of our French teachers will not be returning to their positions next year. What does this say? What do we have left of ourselves to offer our students and support not only their academic needs, but also their critical social emotional well-being. I purchased my home 9 years ago to be in close proximity to my Baker School community and to maintain a good quality of life. If I have to switch schools, for example, to go to FRR, I will add about 1 hour of commuting time each day, which would have a dramatic impact on my personal life and the amount of time that I can commit to lesson planning, correcting at home. I'm fully committed to giving my students the best possible experience that I can offer them. Losing an hour of day being in my car will hurt that. You can keep hiring for your positions at town hall with titles that sound very important, yet no one knows what purpose these positions serve beyond that, nor do we see any direct impact on our students or our school environments. And our students are the reason that we're here, are they not? So let's put those funds into places where these will directly impact the students that we serve, funding the teachers and the paraprofessionals who dedicate themselves to the children of Brookline. They can't build relationships with people who don't exist in their lives. And teachers who do not have the well-being we need to offer our best selves to our students. It's our deeply personal connections with our students that will have a lasting impact on their lives. And this continual uprooting of staff and workload increase and the cycle of teachers coming and going from kids' lives doesn't help. And speaking of our well-being, anxiety, depression, the physical effects of stress, including frequent loss of sleep, gastrointestinal issues, as well as needs for therapy and medication of teachers throughout the district, should not be a byproduct of our jobs. We are suffering as a consequence of the decisions of others. A very interim higher up was given the power to make a bunch of cuts and further contribute to this detrimental situation. And that damage needs to be undone. We're not numbers. We're not FTEs. We're not pawns to be pushed around the district's chessboard at will. We're highly educated professionals as well as human beings, and we deserve to be treated with respect and dignity and the kind of humanity that we teach our students to espouse. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Winder-Shubo, and this is my last official meeting before the school committee as president of the BEU. And I could not be more moved and proud by the example of these educators and what they're teaching me. I heard a world language teacher say, "Please don't say you value me. You actually have just devalued me. You've increased my workload for the same pay and therefore not paid me for the extra work. You actually have just devalued us." So I want to share with you some personal comments from our event last week with Heather McGee. Those comments predominantly address the paraprofessional unit experience. And let me acknowledge Andy Liu, David Perlman. Those are the faces I saw. I would have done it with Val, who were up with us till 2:30 in the morning last night. I know, anyway, you were, Andy. Getting very close and modeling in so many ways, and I appreciate it, what Heather McGee called the solidarity dividend, that we come together, respecting the dignity, the humanity, and the value of every working person, regardless of their pay or where they are in the hierarchy. We are very close, I believe, I trust, to an agreement for the paraprofessionals if we can treat those folks as fully human educators. And by that I mean you can't throw working people into and you've said it already by talking about moving people around like they're pieces on a chessboard or a schedule. Paraprofessionals want to be at the center of taking care of the kids who have the most needs, and they are entitled to do it in a way that minimizes their sense of vulnerability to injury. And let me say one thing about Janae Utaro, and also to your point, Stephen, about increasing the size of an office. Janae Utaro was set up to fail by a model that asks people at the top of the hierarchy to be in charge and take care of fixing a structural problem. These teachers are showing us what the structural problem is. It's a resource problem. It's a staffing problem. And the beauty of their work and of the paras is they are not going to go away, because once you feel that kind of self-respect, it is contagious. And I think you will see from the cards that people from all over the state were here in Brookline. I'm sorry we didn't see more of you there, but you can all watch it on Brookline Interactive TV. Please go find Heather McGee, where she talks about it is critical that we look up and we hold accountable the people who claim they are smarter and more right, having more right to be in control. Right now in Brookline, we need you to stand up to the Finance Committee, to the Fiscal Advisory Committee, to anyone with the audacity to turn an experience of educators into what you're hearing. That funding, we need to see it, see you out there with the same courage of these teachers. Why? Because we can't pull this off otherwise, because we need one another. And we will be there for you when you do it, but we will not allow you not to do it. And so with that, I just want to honor the members of the BEU who have taken, are modeling, because what they are talking about is true for anyone. It's a dignity issue. So thank you very much for staying up so late. Let's get that agreement on Tuesday, and then let's bring back those FTEs so we can keep these amazing people. Thank you. I do want to mention one more thing. Sorry, I'm a little tired. I was in an arbitration today, and Dr. Guillory, I want to say publicly to you, because we're busy and we haven't gotten this chance. When these educators asked for a meeting with you, they were told you were going to be in an arbitration for 2 days, but I was in the arbitration, and I just want to reassure you, they only need you for a few minutes. And so don't worry about not being available because of the arbitration. Thank you.
I'm not on the list, but would it be possible to speak for 1 minute?
Sure, go ahead. Give us your name and where you're from, please.
Thank you, Mr. Perlman. My name is Ilyas Rona. I live on Hammond Street. I'm a Heath parent. I'm sorry. My name is Ilyas Rona. I'm a Heath parent. I live on Hammond Street. My son Bruno is here, and one of his classmates, Clara, is also here. Both of them have had the good fortune of having Mackenzie Shane be their 5th grade teacher this year. Ms. Shane came under unfortunate circumstances where a new hire abruptly quit in the middle of the year. And you would expect that to be a debacle to come into that situation. And it was the opposite. Ms. Shane was fantastic. And you have a situation where the students want her to stay at the school, the parents want her to stay at the school, and you have a community that voted to fund teachers. We have buildings, we need humans in the buildings to teach. And I'm unqualified to comment on why, but we're getting a sense that due to the rules, 3 sections going down to 2, Ms. Shane doesn't have a classroom. And Dr. Sebelius, I think, has tried his best to try to find a home. And I emailed all of you, or I meant to email all of you, a letter shortly before this meeting outlining the importance of Ms. Shane and the importance that you and Dr. Guillory can play in finding a place. We have a teacher that wants to be here, and we have a community that wants her to be here. When a good teacher is gone, that's a disappointment. when a good teacher who wants to stay is forced to go somewhere else, that's a tragedy. Thank you.
All right, our next agenda item is, yes?
Before we go on, can I just, I just want to say on occasion of your last meeting, Jessica, I just want to say thank you for representing the teachers so passionately while you've been here from me on the school committee. All right, we will now be moving on to an update on the Heath School renaming process, sharing a proposed new school name, and possible vote to rename the Heath School. Dr. Guillory?
Thank you, Dr. Sevelius, as you make your way to the microphone. Dr. Sevelius mentioned to me, I think in my first year as superintendent, that he and the Heath community were contemplating a name change. And I said, what Asa typically says is, oh boy, are we seriously thinking about this? So, but that perseverance and tenacity and that commitment to right sizing and making right a school name, the school has prevailed in doing so. And so I won't use a lot of words now to do that, but I'm looking forward to hearing from Dr. Sevelius as well as the Heath School students.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask the students to come to the front row if they could. Just maybe have a seat right here. We'll introduce you in a bit. He was retained often. This man. Okay, well, there he goes. So thank you, everybody, and we'll introduce the student renaming committee in just a bit. But this past week, last week on Friday, we did have a two-day vote to decide on our school name. So we will reveal that at the end of the presentation. So we're very excited to bring forth the candidate for our school name. Betsy, thank you. So to begin, we have Marin, Elisa, Bruno are all here. Next slide. You can see each one of them, if you see, you can see each one represents not only themselves in the school, but each one represents some aspect of the school community that felt really important to have. So you see Madison is here in the front, and Francesca and Sophie. Madison represents our grade 6, so does Francesca. Sophie represents grade 8. We have Young Scholar representatives. Young Scholars is our 4 through 8 program that leads kids into the calculus project and the African American Latinx project at the high school. So why are we changing the school name? I will be honest, this presentation was designed for the entire school. So what you are going to be experiencing in just the next few minutes is really what kids experienced and what our student panelists designed, practiced, and then presented to the entire school all at once. Really explaining once again why we're changing the school name. My hope is that by now everybody really understands that the Heath family generations ago took great pride not only in the school and their position in the town, but that pride and positionality came at the cost of enslaving other people. And for us, when we learned that information, it felt like too far afield. We were not interested in walking under the moniker any longer. It was one of the things I brought up to staff first, and 100% of staff were interested in changing the name immediately, or just simply removing the name immediately. We recognized early that we needed a much more formal process. And thus, since December 2021, I sent a letter to the parent community, began speaking with the children, began building capacity with staff. And so now in June of 2023, we are finally at a position where we've made a vote. Thank you, Betsy. So one of the things that was really important for kids to remember all the time, and people still ask us, are we changing the mascot of the school? No, we're still the Hawks. The school colors, are we changing the school colors? No, we're still white and black, green, sometimes gold. People are really committed and connected with these things. It's really wild and exciting at the same time. Even our gecko, our school pet gecko is named Hawk. So it's a big deal. And we are not changing how awesome we are. That was definitely what we felt as a student committee needed to be stated as well. And on the screen, you will also see, we had throughout this presentation, you'll see a lot of the visuals that were created. These were co-created by myself and Michael Chan, who serves primarily with the superintendent, but also the students all met and discussed kind of the branding of our process. And so this is one of the early brands, naming the 4 finalists for our school name: Ruth Batson, Ellen and William Kraft, Roland Hayes, and the artist John Wilson. So every kid got a sticker. We had many of these stickers and kids were wearing them all over the school throughout the process. Next, Betsy, thank you. Very quick reminder, I won't read the whole screen, but the kids really did come up with the criteria of who, not just who we wanted, but what were the qualities of the candidate that we wanted in our new school name. And I've said this before in other meetings, and so thank you for bearing with me, but the adults, and there is an adult member of the committee in the room as well, Dave Gayshock is here. We spent a lot of time talking about what was the criteria for naming. And when we brought our kind of big ideas to our student renaming committee, they were immediately able to cut through the nonsense, so to speak, and help us make real decisions really quickly. Which by this time we had amassed about 31 or 32 nominees from the community of possible school names. And so having the pile of nominees over here and then a criteria that the students really, really put together helped us move the process forward very, very quickly. And you'll see in our 4 final candidates that I just named, each had a very deep connection to Boston or the greater Boston area and Brookline. Now, Brookline is, of course, where we center our work, but we are designed to be, we've decided to be a welcoming community. And that means that we partner very deeply and purposefully with the greater Boston community, Boston in particular, thus the candidate Ruth Batson, who was the Metco, founder of Metco. And that's thus that kind of honoring of that long connection between us. We also chose very clearly and quickly, we did not want to move forward Indigenous candidates, and we'll talk about that a bit later, I will. So the criteria was we wanted educators, helpers, artists, connections, commitments to educating others through advocacy, through mentorships, and so on. So all of our candidates had these qualities. We also were very purposeful. We really did want a person of color. In particular, we wanted Black folks really represented in our candidate pool and in our finalist pool. That for us felt really important because this was, again, this felt like a reparative process. Harm had been done. Harm had been done outright. It had been a hidden harm. And once there was a learned understanding of the harm committed at a certain time, we really felt strongly that there was a possibility for repair in the nominee, the finalist for our school name, Betsy. So again, here are some of these beautiful graphics that we had. And the 4 candidates again, Ruth Batson, John Wilson, Ellen and William Kraft, and Roland Hayes. At each stage of the process, we were actually able to work, and the QR code at the bottom just goes right to our website, which had almost too many resources, frankly. But we were able to have experts on each person's life come and present to our committee and to students and our young scholars or our AAPI affinity group. I was able to spend a morning with current CEO and president of Metco, learning very deeply about Ruth Batson, John Wilson's children. Erica and Roy Wilson came and spoke with our school. We had Ilian Wu, who just wrote the book, Master, Slave, Husband, Wife, come and speak with our children. She's also speaking on the 20th in the evening at Brookline Booksmith, a very excellent book. And then Roland Hayes, we had Barbara Brown, and I connected, with Rob. Hi, Rob. Via email, and I've already connected with their family as well. So trying to get as many experts into the building as well as just tons and tons of research. So if we could watch this video very quickly, we'll only watch one. We'll watch this one since it's the first. The kids, we made these commercials so everybody could really understand each candidate.
John Wilson. John Wilson. John Wilson. John Wilson. John Wilson. John Wilson. His wife, Judith Cowich, said upon his death in 2015, essentially, John felt that his main objective as an artist was to deliver a message to people about Black dignity, about racial justice, and about poor people trying to get a better deal in life. John Woodrow Wilson, American sculptor and painter, was born in Roxbury, Massachusetts in 1922. He and his siblings were first-generation American-born, as his parents were from Guyana in South America. John attended Roxbury Memorial High School and spent lots of time taking art classes at the local Boston Boys Club, now Boys and Girls Club. He attended college at Tufts University and eventually earned his Master's in Fine Arts degree in Paris.
In Paris, Wilson became excited by the art he saw in the world-famous museums, especially the art of Mexico and Africa. He eventually lived in Mexico, studying the great Mexican muralists like Diego Rivera. Upon his return to America, Wilson began to paint the pain, struggles, and injustices he saw in the lives of Black people here at home. His paintings and sculptures celebrated and illuminated the lives of Black folks in America.
Wilson settled in Brookline with his wife, Judith Cowich, in the 1970s. This is where they raised their children and made their home. Wilson's art celebrated social movements and civil rights leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Shirley Chisholm, shined a harsh light on the horrors of lynching, exposed the impact of poverty on Black communities, and uplifted the inherent dignity of Black lives. Because of these themes, and the period in which Wilson was making his art, he was often considered a political artist.
He died January 22, 2015 in Brookline. After Wilson's passing, Boston Globe art critic Sebastian Smee said of him, he was Boston's most esteemed and accomplished artist, and called Wilson's drawings an impulse toward clarity, toward truth.
Great. So Betsy, if you just kind of go through the next few slides, you'll see that every candidate got kind of that treatment. So yeah, you can just keep going to the next slide.
John.
Yeah. So then we had these beautiful posters all over the school as well, tons of information on each candidate. So turning and talk with your neighbor, we're not going to turn and talk right now. And so if you keep going, we'll just move through the rest. So you can see the treatment. And the hope was that people at home were following along too. We really wanted this to be an educational, deeply educational experience, because schools are, thank you, schools are where, you know, the investment is, that's where the work is. So it felt really important to get it right. So finally, we decided it was time to vote in June. We had two practice votes. Well, we had a practice vote. The first one was to choose our favorite ice cream out of 4 choices. The reason we had a practice vote wasn't because we really cared about the flavor of our ice cream, which turned out was cookie dough. And most of the time we just ate donuts during our morning meetings. But on one day we got cookie dough ice cream and other kinds of ice cream too. But so it was cookie dough, but what was really happening is I had some parents behind the scene checking out all the glitches in the matrix so that when it came to the vote day, we would know, okay, what went wrong and how to fix it, so it would be a very smooth operation. At the end, we decided current students, current staff, and current families would be able to vote. And that was something that, sitting with school committee, it was really great to hear your feedback as well in the matrix to figure out what was necessary, what was for the good, and how could this move forward collaboratively. And so that was one of the things we had talked about, who was going to be able to participate. you can pass through that too. We don't need to learn about ranked choice voting, but boy, we use the ranked choice voting and I was very nervous.
What is ranked choice voting?
Yeah, I was very nervous about that because that's hard math. We didn't actually have to practice ranked choice voting with the ice cream because cookie dough was so overwhelmingly a favorite. It was so disappointing. I should have had 4 really horrible flavors or 4 perfect flavors, but well, that's right. They were all horrible, according to Bruno. So the final vote began 7 a.m. on the 8th of June. We had a ballot station out front. The kids were working the crowds and on campus in the morning as people arrived. So we had an in-person voting opportunity with I voted stickers. And then families could also vote online. Kids voted in their classroom on Friday morning. Next slide, Betsy, thank you. But you see there the ballots and what they look like. Okay, voting, and the decision is made. All right, so again, this is more about the technical glitches, et cetera, et cetera. We figured it all out. We are ready to roll. There's our favorite ice cream flavor again. You see cookie dough. Okay, there's our voting poll out front. Okay, keep going. This is all informational. 733 people cast a vote for our new school name. That was really a lot more than voted for the ice cream. So I was nervous when only not that many voted for the ice cream vote. I'm saving my energy for the big one. So 421 people were students. I kind of tried my best to get every single kid, and every kid in the school who was in the building voted. Even our students in RISE voted, RISE in kindergarten RISE and our RISE program, and really everybody was hand over hand, making sure everybody had access and understood. 215 voters were family members, and then almost 100% of the staff voted. 97 people on the current staff voted, which was really extraordinary. And in the end, we did actually have to do ranked choice voting because Roland Hayes, he did not get 50% of the vote, but he was close. And so we did round after round. We brought the children down on the naming committee at noon when the vote closed, right away, come to the library. We sat around and we did, again, that mathematical tallying. Bruno's mom was there, who also served on the committee the entire time. And really just looking at numbers. It was Mr. Miller, a retired school teacher, a retired science teacher, Mr. Patel, the vice principal, myself, Angelica, really going over the numbers, bringing in the kids. Next slide, please. There again is the breakdown of the participants. And then these are 2 different videos. One is the one with Roland Hayes. It's a giveaway. Eventually the numbers did reveal that Roland Hayes was the winner of our new school vote, which was really, it was actually, by the time of the vote, I have to admit, I was pretty tired. And that I was like, I don't really care anymore, just let's do this. But when it was time to reveal the name of our new school, I got really, really emotional. I just felt really great, not only to be done, that just was all completely washed away, but just really moved by all of our candidates and really moved by the process and moved by the kids in front of you. If you click, Betsy, on the smaller one, it's going to be loud, but it's going to be wild. That's a reaction in the classroom.
Putting forward this candidate for our school name.
Okay, so that was, I mean, there was a real roar throughout the school. Yeah, why, I don't know, Roland Hayes, man, he's a pretty awesome guy. He had a pretty awesome life. So feeling good about that. Next slide.
People that voted. That includes students.
So you see here, we videotaped for posterity and for the record how we did the vote. And so there we sit. This is about 4 minutes, so we don't have to watch this, but it is, on the record, So the next steps, we've connected with the family of Roland Hayes. They're very pleased and very proud. And so that is something I need to do, is really sit down formally and congratulate them and get to know them and find ways to invite them into the school to make sure that their voices are heard and they feel connected to our student naming committee, the students, the staff, the families. Meeting with town's name committee, that's going to be scheduled for this July, late July. Preparing the warrant article, I'm going to leave that to Dave Gayshock, who will come up in a second. Continuing the educational opportunities, the excitement's over, now it's time to continue to get down to brass tacks about who we are now. Town meeting in the fall, planning the celebration, which I think Bruno is going to be in charge of, he has a lot of big ideas. And then crafting a land acknowledgement for our school. We learned a lot about the kind of land, what happened to the land we sit on as a school, and really crafting a land acknowledgement that really names the indigenous peoples that lived on our land. But I want Dave to come up, if you would, to talk about or we can just ask in questions. Questions first, okay. Dave's currently crafting the warrant article for us is to move forward in town meeting. But I'm hoping that you would have some questions for our committee members. They've been here a long time and they will take the cookies in the back. So, just feel free to just watch them do that. They might take two. But yes, for our school committee, would you have any questions for our renaming committee?
So I do. So for any of you, what would you say was the highlight of your experience? Go ahead.
Bring the mic over to them.
Oh, it's portable. Wonderful.
Wireless. Well, one of my highlights was once we had announced it to the school, I just heard throughout the entire school, Roland Hayes, just every classroom chanting that name at the same time. Just like I heard kindergartners doing it, and third graders and second graders and middle schoolers. It was just sort of really fun to hear the entire school just chanting a name. I even heard it in the teachers' offices when they're not teaching. Just a lot of cheering.
Well, in general, I think that the highlight of this experience was probably in general just knowing that I'm doing this for a good cause, and that this was my last year in Heath, and I thought my brother, he had a big impact in the school, and I also wanted to follow in his footsteps, doing something that's big and good. Though I felt like I hadn't done it just yet, but now I feel like I've accomplished it just before I leave the school. I feel like I've left my footprint.
Other questions?
Natalia?
So first of all, I want to say thank you to all of you for staying so patiently. I know we are way over time and you guys are amazing that you've sat through this long meeting. And as a Pierce parent of 3 kids, I'm kind of jealous. So I was wondering if you'd be willing to go to some of the other schools to share some of your work and kind of get the other kids of Brookline to learn a little bit about the process. I don't know if it's possible, but I think my kids would love to learn. And if that's possible, next year. Would you be open to it, I guess, is the question to you guys, or are you tired and done with your work?
This is basically how the work all work. This is exactly how decisions are made. Any other statements or thoughts?
Does anyone else have questions or comments for the name selection committee? No? Well, thank you very much for your very hard work. It's very clear your dedication and your passion for this, and it's been a great lesson for civics, and it's ongoing because you saw in that last slide, it's not over yet. So we're still going to need all of you, and hopefully you'll be strong advocates to town meeting and for the other steps that are to come.
A brief word on that. Dave Gayshock, Heath Parent, and town meeting member of Precinct 14. So on to those next steps, which is if the school committee chooses to accept this recommendation, the next step in the process requires a vote of the school committee because the town naming committee cannot act on any proposal to name a school without the school committee bringing it to them. And then we would prepare and file a warrant article for fall town meeting. The timing of that warrant article filing would be in August at this point. During the process of the summer into the fall, as many of you know, there would be a series of hearings and discussions among various boards and commissions that choose to hear and consider this issue. The naming committee would be one of them. School committee, could choose at that point to make any further statement. It wished to, obviously. CDICR and other boards and commissions in town, the select board advisory committee may or may not choose to weigh in on articles as well. And then town meetings in October. And so we plan to, assuming the school committee chooses to go forward, to put this warrant article on the warrant in August for the November town meeting with petitioners. We'd love it if the school committee as a whole, or if not that, individual school committee members who choose to would join as co-petitioners in that warrant article. And along with Miriam Ashkenazi from the select board and myself and potentially other town meeting members as well. And then we'll take it through the committee process pre-town meeting in the fall and end up in November with a presentation to town meeting and hopefully a successful vote like we saw a few years ago with Florida Ref and Ridley. So those are the next steps, and looking forward to hopefully school committee support and working with you all to take those next steps. So thank you.
Dave, is this a new name replace at the same time, or how is that working?
The way we're envisioning setting it up would be a replace at the same time, as opposed to two separate town meeting actions. Some will recall that the Florida Ruff and Ridley School had two separate actions that were about a year and a half apart. Here, we're going to try to do it in one step unless the school committee prefers otherwise. And the town is able to do it either way, but this is a more efficient process if we're able to follow it. Anybody else have questions?
Go ahead, sir, if you'd like.
Hi, my name is Rob Daves. I'm a town meeting member, and I helped with others lead the commemoration of Roland Hayes and John Wilson in two separate events. There's a plaque that commemorates Roland Hayes in front of his home at 58 Allerton Street, where he lived for 50 years. And downstairs, we have that wonderful sculpture of Dr. King. But Martin Luther King, of course, tried to encourage students. And in 1967, he was in Philadelphia at a school, a junior high school. And in his speech, his speech was called, "What is your blueprint?" And he said that up from the red dirt, I'm paraphrasing, but up from the red dirt of Dalton County, Georgia, born from a woman who could neither read nor write, rose Roland Hayes, who went and brought his voice into the palaces of kings and queens. And he used Roland Hayes quite frequently in some of his speeches. And our own town also recognized Roland Hayes for the hero and the immense personality that he was. And there was a Roland Hayes Day that was declared. They presented him with a silver platter. And on his 75th birthday, when he was at Carnegie Hall being recognized for his achievements, our neighborhood, the High Street Hill Association on Pill Hill, where he lives, sent him flowers. And the children from Lincoln School used to walk down across the neighborhood to his front porch to sing him happy birthday in June. And so I spoke with his daughter, Afrika, who's approaching 90 years old, and she was really excited about this. They feel that they've been waiting for this for quite a long time. Ms. Hayes was a classmate of Michael Dukakis, by the way. They're very good friends. And anyway, so the family is very excited, and I'd like to thank all these folks that work so hard, because I think it's a wonderful choice, and it'll really make a big impact on generations of children in our town. Thank you.
Helen?
Thank you for that history. I'm wondering if we could watch the Roland Hayes one, since we watched John Wilson. I know you didn't want to give it away in the beginning, but still.
So the posters were designed by the students. Mike Chan came in with some ideas and we really poured over it. And the kids were very sincere with their feedback, good and indifferent. I must also say that both Ilian Wu and the author, and then also Barbara Brown, really did quite a heavy hand with editing and adding facts and joyful tidbits. But the students also did tons of research. The research that we have presented here is really bite-sized because our audience is children, right? And thus we want to really dig in now till the renaming ceremony. Really.
Roland Hayes. Roland Hayes. Roland Hayes. Roland Hayes. Roland Hayes. Roland Hayes. Roland Hayes said, "I happened upon a new method for making iron sash weights," he said, "and that got me a little raise in pay and a little free time. At that time, I had never heard any real music, although I had some lessons in rhetoric from a backwoods teacher in Georgia. But one day, a pianist came to our church in Chattanooga, and I, as a choir member, was asked to sing a solo with him. The pianist liked my voice, and he took me in hand and introduced me to phonograph records by Caruso. That opened the heavens for me. The beauty of what could be done with the voice just overwhelmed me." Roland Hayes was born on June 3, 1887, in Prairieville, Georgia, to tenant farmers. After his father's death at age 11, Hayes' mother moved her family to Chattanooga, where Hayes first began taking singing lessons during a chance encounter with the church choir director. His musical talent eventually led him to enroll at Fisk University in 1905, where he joined an African-American a cappella ensemble group known as the Fisk Jubilee Singers. In 1911, Hayes eventually settled in Boston after a tour stop with the group, working various jobs to support his singing lessons. Over the next few years, he released several recordings and toured with different groups, culminating in a sold-out solo concert at Symphony Hall in 1917 that he had organized himself.
Frustrated by the lack of opportunity in the United States, Hayes traveled to London in 1920. His performance at Wigmore Hall a year later was warmly received and led to several engagements with European royalty and other high-profile performances. In 1922, Hayes returned to Boston and became the first African-American to perform with a major symphony orchestra. During this time, he maintained a residence in Brookline and bought the 600-acre farm in Prairieville, where his mother formerly worked as a slave.
Hayes continued to tour the United States and Europe until the 1940s, earning praise for his interpretation of classical German and French songs and the rendition of African-American folk songs and spirituals. These performances have been credited with breaking the color barrier on the classical music stage. He was awarded the Spingarn Medal for Outstanding Achievement by an African American by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, in 1924.
By the 1950s, Hayes performed sparingly instead of opting to mentor young professional singers such as Paul Robeson, Marian Anderson, and Leontine Price, and teach voice lessons at Boston College. In 1962, Hayes gave his farewell concert at Carnegie Hall to celebrate his 75th birthday and raise funds for the American Missionary Association College Centennials Fund. Following his death in 1977, Hayes was inducted to the Georgia Music Hall of Fame in 1991.
So anyone else have questions, comments? Well, I think a logical next step at this point would be I will move that the school committee adopt the recommendation of the renaming committee to rename the school the Roland Hayes School. Natalia seconds. Natalia, your vote?
Aye. Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Oh, Mariah.
David, thank you. I vote yes too.
All right, thank you. So that is unanimous for all those present. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right, any final thoughts from anyone? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in today and sharing with us all the really hard work that you did. It's very exciting news. Again, more to come, but you're going to, I'm sure, continue to impress us all with everything that you're working on actively. And you probably are going to want to go home now, but thank you for staying with us so late. We will now move on to our next agenda item, which is discussion of adopting in full the language and obligations of Article 8.39, the Town of Brookline Menstrual Hygiene Products Access Bylaw for the Public Schools of Brookline, first reading. Valerie, would you like to address this?
Sure. Thank you, David. So at town meeting that just concluded, a warrant article on reproductive equity and gender equity passed. Included in that was the menstrual hygiene product bylaw that had passed a couple of years prior. What we learned was that the public schools of Brookline have never adopted that bylaw, the obligations and the responsibilities of that bylaw. And earlier this week, excuse me, both the policy subcommittee and DEIJ voted unanimously to recommend that the full school committee adopt in full the language and obligations of Article 8.39, the Town of Brookline Menstrual Hygiene Product Access Bylaw for the public schools of Brookline, including the amendments to the bylaw that were delineated in warrant Article 20 at the May 2023 town meeting. So that's the recommendation of both subcommittees, and happy to hear anybody's comments or answer any questions.
Yes, any comments, questions, discussion? Andy, go ahead.
Yes, so my understanding from that discussion in subcommittee was that we will then need to draft a policy to give effect to our adoption of this.
Yes, I believe that's correct. It's likely to mirror very closely the warrant article that town meeting passed. There might be some modifications. This is a first reading of it. There had been some suggestions at the joint subcommittee meeting regarding exactly how far to extend that access in terms of grade level bathrooms, because for instance, kindergarten classrooms have their own bathrooms and kindergartners are obviously not going to be menstruating. So there are some further discussions on some of those details, but as a whole, the two subcommittees feel very strongly that we want to adopt the underlying substance of the warrant article.
So we have a policy on menstrual products, don't we? I mean, my recollection is we sort of went beyond at the time, at least, when we did it.
I believe we did go beyond it in practice, but I'm not sure that we had a specific policy to it. Valerie, would you like to comment further on that?
Sure. Yes, Helen. So in practice, we have been following it, although I will say a little bit haphazardly, I think, at some of the schools. But town council indicated that we needed to affirmatively adopt it and draft a policy. And while we were operating under the assumption that the bylaw applied to us as soon as it was passed, it did not. We had to actually adopt it by vote and then draft up our own internal policy.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? All right, so this was a first reading. We have to draft the actual policy as noted. And we will certainly be docketing this again at a subsequent meeting. So that now brings us to our next agenda item, presentations and discussions of current issues, supporting social emotional learning in school, an annual report. Welcome Deputy Superintendent Lisa O'Connell and Dr. Lates, as well as Senior Director of Guidance, Matt Dubois.
Thank you, Chairman Perlman. And thank you, Dr. Guillory, for moving through our slides. Well, thank you all for the privilege of your time this evening. Dr. Lates and Dr. Dubois and I are very pleased to provide this annual report regarding social emotional learning in our schools. We have ambitious goals for the students of PSB, not only for their student achievement, but for all of our students to achieve positive mental health. Following our presentation, we would be happy to take questions. Next slide, please. When we talk about mental health, we're really talking about an umbrella term often used to talk about a range of conditions. Could be stress, anxiety, post-traumatic stress syndrome, panic attacks, others. And conversely, positive mental health includes feeling more in control of your life and personal decisions, feeling positive about self, managing emotions, coping with life's challenges and stressors, being able to focus while in school, and feeling generally optimistic and hopeful about life events. In schools, we know that our children, our students, are trying to figure out who they are, and they're a work in progress. And our goal is to promote social emotional learning consistently every day so that we're not simply responding to emergencies as a matter of practice. Tonight, you will be hearing good news. You will be hearing about increased attendance and less student absences for long periods of time. You'll hear about meaningful increases in children feeling like they belong in school, identifying safe adults. Meaningful increases in children endorsing strong emotional regulation. Meaningful increases in children feeling hopeful. Hundreds of children feeling less worried, and robust professional development for parents, guardians, and staff. But there's duality in this presentation. There is meaningful growth, and then there are identified areas that we'll talk about tonight where continued work is needed. You will hear about the Surgeon General's recent report regarding social media and how a lack of physical activity and sleep can impact health and wellness. We will talk about our approach to the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. We'll think about those students whose stressors outpace the ability to regulate their emotions due to disabilities like ADHD and emotional impairments. And you'll hear about how difficult it is to be a parent today, striking that all-important work-life school balance. Next slide, please. There is a lot of research addressing the active ingredients for wellness, a balance of fun and recreation and personal growth and family and friends and physical health, school belonging, one's physical environment. And in Brookline, we follow that science very closely in OSS to ensure that we have a robust clinical staffing pattern to support students across all our schools, promoting this broader goal of student health and well-being, which is embedded in the strategic plan that we've been working on. It may be of interest to our community to know that we have more than 100 clinical staff, school adjustment counselors, school psychologists, guidance counselors, board certified behavior analysts, related service providers, all working in concert as part of a broader student services strategic plan to support our students. Next slide, please. All local educational agencies that receive federal assistance, including every public school, must submit annual data to the state. The data in the slide above provides information under that umbrella of social emotional learning. This list has sensitive data points, as you can see. As confidential, we're very careful about that, as information can be personally identifiable. And on an annual basis, our school committee receives a summary of data in these aforementioned areas. Next slide, please. So tonight, Dr. Dubois is going to drill down on these 6 specific areas above in practical terms in practice. And with that, I'll transition over to Dr. Dubois.
Thank you, Lisa, and good evening, everyone. As Lisa offered at the outset, we are so deeply appreciative of having the time this evening to really be talking in depth about the work that we're doing to support students. As we've talked about in previous school committee meetings, what folks are deeply aware of, over the past 10 to 12 years, we've seen an increasing number of children meeting criteria for mental health diagnoses. And as Lisa referenced, that context has resulted in a substantial and significant amount of research around how it is that we need to go about supporting student mental health. And what Lisa offered is that so much of that science is driving the work that we're doing to support students. It's really foundational to all of our mental health programming. And so what we would love to do this evening is really talk in depth about how it is that we're translating that science to practice. And as we go along in talking about each of these 6 areas, we also want to offer a little bit about the why, about why it is that we're prioritizing, why it is that we're focusing on the things that we are focusing on. And to start our conversation this evening, we want to, and Dr. Guillory, I'll have you change the slide. I want to sort of start in the space that we've talked about a lot previously, and thinking about school belonging and thinking about having a safe adult at school. What research is consistently telling us is that continuous access to protective factors are critical for supporting children's healthy social and emotional development. Of course, we want to be deeply thoughtful about adverse childhood experiences, but we also know that continuous access to protective factors can really help mitigate the impact of those adverse experiences on children. And so when we look at this research through a school lens, the 2 protective factors that emerge most consistently are experiencing strong school belonging and having a safe adult at school. We've talked about this idea in the past, but as we think about school belonging, it is so important that we are conceptualizing this as a necessary precursor to helping kids access instruction. As we talked about previously, we need to be deeply thoughtful about the number of instructional minutes that are available to children each day, but we must also be thinking about what are the number of minutes each day in which children can actively and meaningfully participate in that instruction. And what we know is that when children experience strong school belonging, when they walk into a learning space and believe deeply that they matter, that they are cared for, that they're well understood, that does something really powerful to kids' brains. That's what makes them psychologically and emotionally available for instruction. And so when you look at the research, and we see this within our schools as well, is that school belonging data typically move along with your academic outcome data because it has such a powerful impact on how it is that kids are engaging in instruction. And so in many ways, when we think about our work in supporting students, school belonging is a North Star. It's a thing that organizes so much of the work that we're doing. And I know when I sort of think about my professional development, professional learning for staff, a lot of that work is focused on school belonging. And I know Janae and Hae-Young have done so much powerful work in the past couple of years around school belonging as well. And it really deserves that amount of attention. Dr. Guillory, I'll have you go to the next slide. We started actively monitoring school belonging back in the fall of 2020. And since that time, we've seen these really powerful, really meaningful increases in school belonging. And it's not an accident, right? That is causal due to the attention that we've paid on it. Back in fall of 2020, about 43% of kids were endorsing strong school belonging. And right now, just under 70% of students are endorsing strong school belonging. When I present these data, it's really common for folks to ask me, how do we compare relative to other school districts? And that's a super fair question. And I appreciate where it's coming from. What I do want to contextualize is that when we look nationally, school belonging data is not particularly strong. And so for us, so yes, we compare very favorably to other school districts, but that is never enough, right? As Lisa sort of forecasted, our lens on this work is that we need to be deeply ambitious. We need to be deeply aspirational and be moving towards a place where every single one of our students is moving into every single one of their learning spaces and believing deeply that they belong there, that they matter there. And so we can absolutely celebrate that growth. And of course, there's more work to be done. And a lot of that work is going to hang out in the space of recognizing that we continue to have discrepancies in these data. And so as offered beforehand, we see discrepancies based on race. We see discrepancies based on participation in MECO, in special education, and in STEPS. I do want to offer is that in this round of surveying, that gap is actually closed a little bit. So that's really, really positive. I do want to name that a single data point isn't a trend, but that is positive that we have seen some decreases in that discrepancy. But for us, we know this is work that we need to continue to focus on and prioritize in the years ahead. We'll go to the next slide. What we also really pay attention to is we ask kids a question on the universal screening. Do you have an adult at school that you can go to when you're having a challenge? And this is a really, really important protective factor for children. And when I look at these data, this is probably my favorite piece of data to look at. And the reason for that is that children have this beautiful habit of making us earn this designation. This does not happen accidentally. This does not happen just by being around children every single day, right? We are causing this work to happen, right? That we're demonstrating to children, yes, I am a person in your life that you can go to. And so again, we've seen these really meaningful increases over the last 3 years. And right now we're right at just under 80% of students can identify a safe adult at school. And so it's really powerful. It's really important. And of course, right, we're very worried about those 20% of kids who are not yet able to identify a safe adult. And so what I want to offer here is that every single time we complete the survey, our clinical teams and our educators are identifying who those students are who are not yet identifying a safe adult. And there's a tremendous amount of support that's being put around those students, so they're coming to experience us as being safe people in their lives. So again, as Lisa sort of forecasted, there's duality here. It's powerful, it's beautiful that we have these increases. And of course, there's more work to be done. We'll move to the next slide. When we think about broadly school belonging, when we think about having a safe adult at school, we will expect that it's going to impact attendance. We expect that it's going to impact engagement. That's really, really, really important. For us, as we're thinking about schools, it's really important that we're thinking about schools as this really unique place where kids are offered a really unique set of academic, social, and emotional experiences. And those experiences are so important for healthy child development, right? And so we know when we see this oftentimes in our work is that when kids struggle to attend school, what comes with that oftentimes are academic, social, and emotional difficulties. What we experienced last year, like a lot of school districts, is that attendance was rough. A lot of students did struggle to attend school consistently. And so you see at the lower part of the slide, so last year, our chronic absenteeism rate was 15.1%. And we define chronic absenteeism as missing at least 10% of school days in which you were enrolled. So this year, every single building, just about every single administrator in the district has really prioritized and focused on attendance. And so in practice, that looks like sending a lot of messages to families around the importance of attendance. School teams are very regularly running attendance reports. At the first sign that kids are struggling to attend, there's a lot of interventions that are applied for those students. And then in general, as we're thinking about our support of students, oftentimes we're thinking about attendance and thinking about the things we can do to support kids so that every single day that they're available to attend school, they're doing so. And we've seen some really meaningful impact of that work. And so when I ran the attendance report at the beginning of the month, we were sitting right around 13% as our chronic absenteeism rate. Prior to the pandemic, we were sitting around 7%. So clearly we're not all the way back, and we wouldn't expect that to be the case. This is a deeply complex issue that we're likely going to need to focus on for several years, but it is good. It is powerful that we've seen some impact already on this work. And so again, it's great that we've seen an improvement, and of course, there's more work to be done. We'll go to the next slide. When we think about the science around supporting students, is this really, really important big idea around how critically important prevention and promotion is. And what I want to sort of offer here, if there's anything that folks take away from this presentation, I really hope it's this slide and information here. What's really important is that we cannot first become interested in a child's well-being when they're experiencing distress. It is incredibly, incredibly important that we are actively and on purpose trying to promote healthy social emotional development throughout a child's educational career. We know that it is so important. There's so many positive outcomes that happen for children when we on purpose explicitly teach them how to identify their feelings. When you're teaching kids, when you feel a big thing, here's how you navigate it successfully. When you teach kids how to form healthy relationships, when you teach kids how to make responsible decisions, these are life skills that we apply every single day of our lives. And so much of our mental health programming is meant to very explicitly sit in this prevention and promotion-based work. And some examples of that, we've been very intentional with how we've been building our clinical teams. And so a real power of us having adjustment counselors now in each of our building is that our school counselors are able to do really robust tier 1 classroom-based prevention-based work. And so they're in classrooms leading whole class lessons. They're consulting with teachers to really help them embed SEL in their practices. Our K-5 teachers in particular, not that all of our teachers aren't, but our K-5 teachers in particular are doing a ton of work around actively teaching kids social and emotional skills. What we really want also for kids to appreciate is that we don't want you to think about your social and emotional skills as being separate from your academic learning, as being separate from other parts of your life. And so there's a lot of professional development that we lead around really helping teachers actively embed SEL into the everyday practices that kids experience and really embedding it into academic learning. This year, this has really been a focus of my professional development. And by the end of the year, educators will have access to over 1,000 hours of professional development that really focused on this idea of how is it that we embed social emotional learning into the everyday experiences that kids have. We've also, in previous school committees, talked about advisory, and we absolutely conceptualize that structure as being really, really powerful for students in middle school and high school, as being this place where we can really teach kids social and emotional skills and help reinforce their use. We'll go to the next slide. As Lisa forecasted at the beginning, one of the skills that we're actively teaching children is around emotional regulation. As we're helping kids establish healthy relationships with their emotions, we want kids to recognize that as a person, you are sometimes going to experience the full range of unpleasant emotions. And when you do, we want to make sure that kids have the skills available to them to influence them in healthy and positive ways. And so what we've seen over the past several years is this really meaningful, really positive increase in the skills that children have available to them when they're experiencing big emotions. And again, these are life skills that all of us apply every single day in our experiences. One thing that I want to surface here is that every single person, we can experience a stressor that can outpace our capacity to cope. And what we really need to appreciate in these data is that stressors for children are not equally distributed. And so you see that bullet there where students in METCO, students in STAP, students in special education, when they're asked about their emotional regulation skills, fewer of those students are endorsing strong emotional regulation skills. I think it's a pretty biased, pretty narrow, pretty incomplete interpretation of these data to say, well, those kids just have weaker emotional regulation skills. We need to focus on the resiliency, because that's not what's happening. When we work with and when we support those students, they are telling us there's a lot going on in my life, right? There are things that are going on in children's life that we should never expect a 6 or a 12 or a 17-year-old to be able to navigate independently. And so for us, when we see students endorsing challenges related to emotional regulation, we absolutely take that whole child approach and really be thinking about systemically, how can we support that child? And what are those supports that are really going to help them, right? So I just want to make sure I surface that as we look at these data. We'll go to the next slide. As folks may know, so I'm trained as a clinical psychologist, and what's been really interesting in the past 3 years is that a lot of these really big ideas around mental health have taken center stage. And I know for me, I definitely feel this deep responsibility to really sort of shape the conversations that we have around mental health. And what's really, really important within this conversation is that we're helping kids and this is adult work as well, is that we're having this really good understanding of sort of differentiating between what is a normative experience of an unpleasant emotion versus when do you need additional help. And when you've identified that you need additional help, how can we make sure you can get that help and get that help quickly? And so as we think about this space, we have a couple of things here that really that have helped sort of target this idea, the psychoeducation around mental health for kids, parents, and for teachers. And so that mental health first aid training was something that we offered to educators last summer. And again, it was a lot of information around what is positive mental health and really helping educators differentiate between what is normative for a child to experience and when might be suggestive of children needing additional help, and then helping them link those children to additional resources. This year in our 7th and 9th grade health classes, our health teachers in a really beautiful, really powerful way implemented the Signs of Suicide curriculum. And in that curriculum, kids are given this really powerful information, or really, really understanding signs of when you might need help or when your friend might need help. And children are given very concrete resources about who to go to and what resources they can access when they're in that situation. And we'll talk more in a moment around parent workshops. We have led workshops that have been very focused on this area so that guardians have a really good understanding when they might need additional support for their children. And so we'll go back one second, Dr. Guillory. So when I was building out, that was good anticipation though. When I was building out this slide, I just wanted to make sure that folks were aware of the number 988. Last summer, a nationwide crisis hotline was established. And so it's meant to function just like 911. And so if you yourself or a child or a colleague or a friend is experiencing a mental health emergency, anybody can text or call 988 and you're immediately connected to a crisis worker. So this is really important as a community that we know that is a resource that's available to all of us. All right, we'll go to the next slide now. Oh, perfect. So as we're teaching kids about their emotions, right, we're teaching kids that occasionally, sometimes you're going to experience the full range of unpleasant emotions. And where we're sort of teaching kids that difference between when you might need additional support is when you're almost always or frequently experiencing an unpleasant emotion for a duration of 2 weeks or more, and if those feelings are impacting one or more areas of your functioning. And so if I draw your attention to this first table, if we're looking at the orange and red parts of the graph, those are the children who are reporting to almost always or frequently feeling worried. And right now, that number is sitting at 20% of students in grades 3 through 12. At its peak, we were at 25%. And so that as Lisa referenced before, that is hundreds of children now who are not experiencing that chronicity of worry. And that is still a big number. And unfortunately, that is a number that's been really familiar to us for about a decade, right? We've sort of experienced this level of worry in children for a very long time. What I really want to name here is that we know exactly who these children are. And these are the children who are accessing our school-based mental health supports. These are the children who are connecting to community-based resources, right? And so there's a lot of really robust support that's being provided for these children. As we're thinking about mental health, it's also really important that we're not exclusively thinking about those unpleasant emotions, that we're also thinking about kids' experiences of feeling happy, of feeling excited, and feeling hopeful. And for me, hope is perhaps the most important psychological experience that a person can have. Hope is this belief, is this comment that we have about the future, that the future can align more consistently with how we want it to be, that it can sort of be better potentially than it is now. And so it's really important, it's an active ingredient in feeling well, of being hopeful. And so again, if I draw your attention to that second graph, when we're looking at orange and red, those are the children who are reporting to us not oftentimes feeling hopeful. And again, we are knowing who these children are. And again, these are the kiddos who are accessing our supports. And a central and sometimes first part of mental health treatment is really focusing on hope, because we know how critically important it is for hope, how important a role hope plays in mental health treatment and really helping kids fully access those services. We'll go to the next slide. As we have this conversation, it's really, really important that we're very much thinking about health promoting behaviors, right? And what I want to offer here is these are the behaviors, when we talk about them with kids, they roll their eyes, they sigh, and they say, why is this adult talking to me again about my sleep and my eating and my physical activity? But this is so, so important, right? We all have human bodies, And if we're not taking care of them, we're not going to feel well. As Lisa offered earlier, so as we're thinking about health promoting behaviors, a thing that we're constantly talking about with children is their use of technology and their use of social media. Some folks may have just seen that the Surgeon General released an advisory that is really describing this increasing amount of research that's telling us that social media is having a very real, very adverse impact on kids' mental health. And as we think about that, it's really, really important that we understand that children are engaged in this incredibly important developmental task of figuring out who they are. Upward social comparison. So when we're comparing ourselves to a standard that we just can't meet, that we feel like we're never going to be able to meet, that's bad for all of us. But it's particularly challenging for children when they're in that really vulnerable developmental period. And so what we know from research and what we know from working with kids is that it's really common for kids to come away from their experiences using social media feeling really badly about themselves. What we also know is that use of social media, there is an opportunity cost there. It's really common for kids to be reporting that they're using it 3+ hours a day. And so we think about, so what's not happening now during that time? And so we know that social media is having a very real impact on sleep. It's having a very real impact on physical activity. It's having a very real impact on kids' in-person connections. And so when we think about social media, when we think about technology more broadly, this is a beautiful example of how important our partnership is going to be between the school, between families, and the community. I'm of the belief that this isn't going away anytime soon. So it's really, really important that we're really taking that holistic perspective and thinking about how it is that we can help children access technology in healthier ways. We'll go to the next slide. So a source of data that we have available to us to be looking at kids' health promoting behaviors, to be looking at children's engagement and behaviors that impact their wellness is a youth risk behavior survey. As folks probably know, this is a survey that was created by the CDC, and it measures all those areas that you see here listed on this graph. We'll go to the next slide. Relatively recently, the CDC produced a trend report, and so we thought it would be helpful just to provide this broader trend analysis about what we're seeing nationally. And so this is a publicly available report. And there are some very concerning things. And this is sort of why people are describing us being in a mental health crisis. And so from 2011 to 2021, we saw an increasing number of children reporting to persistently feeling sad or hopeless. We saw students who are female. We saw increases in suicidal ideation and suicidal behavior. When you look specifically at the 2021 administration, students who are female, students who are LGBTQ+, were more likely to report feeling persistently hopeless and sad, were more likely to endorse suicidal ideation, were more likely to engage in suicidal behaviors. More optimistically, when you look at that time period, there were decreases in marijuana use for all groups, with the exception of students who are female, were stayed the same. Less positively, when you look at school year, the 2021 administration, students who are female and students who are LGBTQ+ were more likely than their peers to engage in substance use. And so we'll go to the next slide. So that's the national trend, right? Now we're also going to be able to have localized data. And so we just administered the Youth Risk Behavior Survey in 6th through 12th grade in the month of May. And our job and our responsibility now is to analyze those data, and we'll produce a public report in the fall. As part of that report, it's going to be really, really important that we're disaggregating the data. And one thing that's come up previously in the school committee, and it should, is that historically, in the past couple of years, we have not had good data around the experiences of our LGBTQ+ students. And we're really hopeful that this analysis is really going to provide those data. And so I anticipate at some point in the fall where we'll come back together and we'll summarize what we're finding and learning from this survey. We'll go to the next slide. And then to close out, we want to talk about some of the partnerships that we have going on within the community. What is, I think, another important context as we're thinking about the mental health of children and adolescents is historically, schools have been described as the de facto mental health centers for children. And the reason for that is the vast majority of people who are trained to provide mental health services are trained to work with adults. And so in the last 15 years, as we've seen an increasing number of children requiring mental health services, most communities do not have those providers available to meet kids' needs. But we know what is best for kids is when they're able to access really robust school-based services, and then also be able to provide, access services within the community. And so that's a really important lens in this work. And so if folks know, we've had a really good, really long relationship with the Brookline Center. They really help support our Bright programming. We also have really strong relationships with Brookline PD and the Brookline Public Health Department. A new relationship that we want to surface is with Cartwheel Care. And so Cartwheel Care is a new organization, and they provide rapid access to telehealth mental health services. And so referrals come through school, and kids are typically able to access counseling within a week of that referral. And so in a landscape where it's not uncommon for providers to have months-long wait lists, this is a connection, this is a relationship that allows us to really help kids access those community-based supports very quickly. And so we'll continue to have that relationship next year. And so far, it's been a really, really powerful thing for our students. We'll go to the next slide. As we think about our work, we also really have this lens of how is it that we are supporting caregivers? How are we supporting parents and supporting their children? Within that Surgeon General's advisory, one source of data that came out is that a lot of parents are reporting that being a parent has never been more challenging. I know I have a 2, 4, and 6-year-old, and so we're prior to social media or prior to phones, but it's something I'm deeply worried about. And so many parents are in a place where they are navigating issues they've never had to navigate before. And so these are a list of the workshops that we have held this year for parents. And we've tried to be really intentional in having these overlay those 6 bullet points that we outlined at the beginning of this presentation about these really key ingredients in supporting student mental health. And so this is work that's going to continue into next year because it's just so important that we're working collectively to support students. And then we'll go to what I think is our last slide. So a couple other relationships that I want to surface here is we have a multi-year contract with Panorama. So our universal screening work is going to continue. When we think about the departments broadly within PSB, the collaboration is incredibly important, particularly something as complex and broad as mental health. And so we work really, really closely, OSS does, in working with the Office of Teaching and Learning, of working with the Office of Educational Equity. To surface some examples of that work, we're going to be working really, really closely with OTL around the child study team process. When we think about the provision of mental health services, it is fundamental, it has to be at the forefront of our minds that those services are being provided to children in culturally affirming ways. And so we've been able to work with the Office of Educational Equity this year around that, and that's work that certainly is going to continue into the future. We also wanted to highlight here is helping kids feel safe at school, helping kids form healthy relationships is fundamental to school belonging. And so in OSS, we've provided a lot of support and a lot of training to educators, into administrators around bullying, harassment, and discrimination protocols. We really want to make sure that those situations are handled in a really effective way. And we really want to make sure that kids are able to access the right supports and the right interventions based from these situations. We also wanted to surface that right now we are working on a district-wide threat assessment protocol. Right now, when threats occur within a school, school administrators are absolutely using best practices. We want to codify those. We want to put them into a protocol. And so we're hopeful that those will be available to folks in the fall. And then very finally, what I haven't talked about a lot today, but it's really, really important, it's something that's on my mind a lot, is how it is that we're supporting educators. It is impossible to support kids when you yourself are not feeling well. And so thinking about supporting our educators is something that is really critical and really fundamental to this work. As a couple of examples of what that has looked like, this year we contracted with a wellness coach, and she held bi-weekly meetings for staff, and they were held before school and after school, and there's also an asynchronous version of that. She also led monthly workshops for educators and really focused on, as an educator, how can you support your wellness? And so we're going to have some action items and some initiatives that will continue into next year because that is just a fundamental and critically important part of this work. And so I appreciate that we have thrown a lot out there. There's a lot of information, and I anticipate some folks might have some questions.
Helen, go ahead.
Matt, and just wanted to say that Dr. Litaz is also here to answer questions as well.
All right, Helen, so we'll start with you.
So thank you for this presentation. It was really quite comprehensive. I had a couple of questions, mostly clarifications. How do you define chronic absenteeism?
Missing at least 10% of school days in which you're enrolled. So for kiddos who are enrolled the entire school year, that number would be 18.
So if a kid has COVID or something like that, they could hit that right away.
Yep.
So what is the chronic absenteeism that we're concerned about versus the chronic absenteeism that is sort of specific to something that isn't worrisome?
So Helen, so that's a great question. So for us, what's important, so there's a couple of layers here. So obviously when we're thinking about chronic absenteeism, that's related to a very legitimate illness. Let's say a student broke their leg, was out for 2 weeks, right?
Or we have kids who are in the hospital, that come here to school that.
What's also important for us to know is that those students still oftentimes will miss instructional time. And those kiddos sometimes will still need some support to transition back into school, right? So we still want to be thinking about supports for those students. One thing that we do at the first sign that a student is missing a lot of school is that we do interview the child, we interview the caregivers to really figure out, is it legitimate? You had COVID and you were sick, or were there some somatic symptoms? Is there some early anxiety? And really making sure we're addressing that early on if possible. What I didn't offer here is what's not captured in that chronic absenteeism rate are kids who are absent way more than 10% of school days. And so last year, it was really common that we would see children missing 40, 50, 60, 70, even more days in school than that. When I ran that report in June, that was far less frequent. It was much more common that kids were sort of just moving past that. They were sort of around 22, 23, 24 school days. That's still a meaningful amount of school, right? But we have seen certainly some decreases in just how significant some of those absenteeism challenges are.
Yeah, it would be interesting to sort of break out that data in ways that help us to understand how critical, how serious is this? 13% is not great. I'd like us to get back to our 7%. If the committee will indulge me, I had 2 more questions, if that's okay. Cartwheel.
I just have one quick follow-up question on the same theme.
Oh, sure.
How many CRAs do you end up filing as a result of chronic absenteeism?
Not a ton. And I'd say for us, we really want to exhaust other interventions and supports first. So it does happen,
that term for those of us who don't know what
so child requiring assistance. And so that's typically you're filing a report with you're getting the child's court involved. And so that is an option, but typically we're trying to reserve that as a very last option for kids.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Helen.
So my second question had to do with the cartwheel care and what sorts of professionals are providing this care. I sort of worry about, and where are they?
So they're all providers are in Massachusetts, and every single provider is either a licensed psychologist or an LICSW.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay. And they're able to maintain them. That's interesting because
so the way
shortage.
So their model does a really nice job at making sure they're maintaining really high quality mental health professionals. And so that's another layer on it that, I get your concern if you're accessing something, but it's not really helping you. So far, the kids and families who are accessing it are reporting tremendous impacts on their wellness.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. That's wonderful.
Can I ask a follow-up on Cartwheel? Is it available to all ages, or is it only middle school, high school?
So it's available. So it is telehealth, right? So there are some developmental considerations as you're thinking about a platform like Zoom. And so right now our contract is for students grades 3 through 12. What is available, there's a parent coaching option that is available for all caregivers.
Great. My last question, and then I'll stop. The district-wide threat assessment, what is that?
Yeah, so that's just going to be a standardized protocol that we'll use when a threat is made at school or when we have learned that a student has made a threat in general. So we just want to make sure that every school is using the same practices and procedures to handle that.
So internal or external threat? Or you're talking just internal?
For students, when a student has made a threat.
So this is for internal student threat?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
All right. I wasn't sure where the
Makes sense. Yeah, thank you for that.
that's
Yeah.
why. Thank you very much.
And a follow-up question I have on that. So as you're conducting this district-wide threat assessment, do you anticipate there will be specific policy implications that you would like to see?
Great question. No, so in taking a look at existing policy, I don't think there's anything in there that would need to be changed. So my immediate response is no. Now, if that changes, I'll let you know.
All right, Mariah, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, Matt, for the presentation. I have a couple more questions beyond the ones that were, but they're in similar themes. So for the chronic absenteeism rate, can you contextualize that by providing some sort of benchmarking or comparison to the state rates or other districts? How do we compare?
Sure. So, and looking at, so for example, so I think last year, so our number was 15% was chronically absent. That was essentially identical to Newton, for example. Boston Public Schools was over 40% across the state. The number, it was above 25%. So, but again, that's a really, really high number. And again, historically, prior to the pandemic, we were around 7%. Now, leading into the pandemic, there was some increases. So the 3 years before that, it would sort of jump like 0.5% a year. But that's sort of, yeah, broadly how we've compared.
Thank you. Could I bring it back to something that you and David were talking about, which is the absenteeism letter, which I believe is a district-wide letter that parents get, basically threaten to, and the wording you think doesn't this, but parents receive this letter and it threatens that they're going to be reported to Child Protective Services for excessive absenteeism. And I don't know to what extent you're familiar with that letter, Matt, but I guess
So I'm very so I so appreciate that from a parent lens.
Yeah.
And just so you know, actually we have taken feedback since we actually have adjusted that language. Part of there are legal requirements on describing for families the full range of potential implications of chronically missing school. So that's where that language came in, but we have, based on that type of feedback, changed that language.
Okay, I don't know if the language has been changed very recently or if the language hasn't percolated throughout the entire district in terms of what people are using, but I do think it would be very helpful to make sure that the language is softened, because I heard comments as recently as this past Sunday night, parents talking about the letter and how uncomfortable it made them. And the example Helen gave was exactly right, of a kid who had COVID and was out for, an extended period, just like with any other thing that you would get. And the parents received this letter. And especially given those sorts of cases where we know why someone's out, it feels very ominous, threatening to them. So it's the irony of treating kids' social, emotional health and mental health, and then providing this excessive strain and stress on families is, and caregivers is very.
We can certainly take a look.
Yep.
Thank you. And then for the high school, are you measuring absenteeism as like sort of a mixed fraction of their classes? Like how are you looking at absenteeism at the high school where people don't necessarily miss a day?
I know you are noting a thing that makes it way more complicated. So when you look at that pure chronic absenteeism number, looks at full day absences, and so the high school will typically have the lowest rates, and it's not capturing that class level absenteeism. That's the thing that administrators really pay attention to, and so when they are running attendance reports, they're looking at that level of analysis.
That's good. Okay, that's really helpful. And so they're looking at it both from time of day and block, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And then my last question is, the Cartwheel community Cartwheel Care, I think, is very, very exciting because of the ability it gives for people to access health care so quickly, when, as you said, it can take months or even like close to a year in some cases to get care. And I just was wondering if you could, I think you said this, but I'm not sure if referral can only be done by school personnel. Is that correct? Can families, for example, who know that their child is in crisis, can they reach out to the school and
Absolutely, yeah.
accelerate the sort of process?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, so what, and broadly, I was.
And how would caregivers know this? Because I don't think this has been announced to the community at all yet, but to me,
Sure.
it's such a critical resource for this to be a partnership between home and school.
And what I would encourage, as caregivers are comfortable doing so, I think a school counselor is always a really good first point of contact, is letting them know the concerns that you're seeing at home, right? And there's a full range of options, even beyond Cartwheel, that we can be thinking about for supporting families. But I'll absolutely encourage, anytime you are concerned about your child's mental health, even if they're looking okay at school, if you're seeing it at home, absolutely reach out to your school counselor and have them sort of engage in thinking about additional supports.
Okay, so that's mediated by the school counselor, the guidance counselor.
Yep.
Okay, that's very helpful to know. And does everyone know who their guidance counselor is?
They should, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful to understand.
All right,
And I
Susan?
appreciate you, sorry, just one thing, I do appreciate you looking at the letter again.
Yep.
Thanks, David, and thanks for the presentation. In your readout of the panorama data last March, I think you covered some categories like perceptions of safe adults, feelings of worry, feelings of safety, lack of safety, pleasant feelings and unpleasant feelings, and you were able to give us a readout that was disaggregated by race.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there was a lot of discussion in the school committee that was alarmed at the disparities that you presented. I'm wondering if you've had any time at OSS to talk about how you might adjust your strategies as a result of that discussion, and if not, how you might take that into consideration going forward. And also, if there's been any change over the last quarter. I really doubt there has been, but I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no, so on this most recent round of surveying, we did see a reduction in that discrepancy. Again, what I want to also name, just from a psychometric. So one data point is not a trend. And so I'm really curious if when we do this again in the fall and in the winter, are we continuing to see that gap close? And what I would offer is that almost all of the professional development that we're thinking about school belonging, so much of the partnership that we've done with Office of Educational Equity is really meant to address that discrepancy. And so it is incredibly well received, and you're really wise to be asking that question. That is sort of a primary focus in thinking about those school belonging data, broadly because we know how important it is for wellness, but also because we know it impacts academic outcomes as well.
So just to be clear, so are you looking at changing your requests for PD as a result of this, or is this what you've been planning all along, using PD to address, for instance, implicit bias, so as to change the disparate results around socio-emotional outcomes?
Yeah, so it's probably
stay the course or make a change, I guess, is what I'm asking.
I would say it's probably both and. So I think there's work that that I feel really, really good about, and I think we're seeing it reflected in the data with some of those pieces closing. And we need to always be in a place where we're thinking about how we can improve our professional practice and how it is that we can think about using these data to sort of drive what those professional learning experiences look like for educators. So yes. And there's a lot of work that's already happening that I feel really good about.
Okay, I thought this was a great presentation. I'd love in future presentations to know a bit about some of the content of the PD that you're planning in the future to address these disparities. Thanks.
Helen, go ahead.
Just another quick question. I thought I heard you say the chronic absenteeism at the high school was less than the elementary schools?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What is it at the high school?
I think it was just under 10%. But again, what is challenging there, it's not uncommon, as sort of Mariah was talking about, for students to not be marked absent for the full day, but to be missing classes during the day. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. We're looking at K-8 to the high school. So it's just an additional lens on it.
Right, but still, I would have expected more absenteeism at the high school and less in the elementary schools where parents are more in control. somewhat. So to hear that it's less,
Mhm.
maybe they're missing.
Yeah, part of what we
classes.
I think what we can do is within this analysis, take a look at the percentage of class periods in which kids have missed 10% or more of those class periods and sort of compare that. I think that's probably a better comparison of that.
Mhm. Thank you.
Sort of a similar follow-up question I have. Do we know that the absenteeism rate is truly 13% in the sense that what are the protocols around when a student arrives tardy? Is a student sometimes marked as absent but really was present?
So if a student is in attendance for more than half the day, so essentially if they come to school by 11:15, they'll be marked present for the full day. If they arrive after that time period, they're marked as absent.
Okay. And that would be true even if there was an excused absence for the earlier part of the day?
Correct. Yep. It just gets marked as an excused absence again. So for us, there's no, if you're absent for a very legitimate reason, there's no penalty, and none of this is meant to be punitive. And Mariah, I really appreciate that feedback. None of this is meant to be punitive. It's really meant to be deeply supportive, and for us, really capturing kids as early as possible so they are able to access the supports that they may need.
And when delving into potential reasons for absenteeism, particularly at the elementary school level, are you finding that certain subcategories are more pronounced? So you mentioned that the broader concern is that it might be anxiety. To what extent is it perhaps transportation or the parents and caregivers not being available?
Yeah, sure. And we absolutely run into those types of issues, right? And those are issues that we need to problem solve for, right? So there's absolutely been times when we thought about transportation and we want to facilitate that. We don't want there to be any barriers whatsoever for a child to access their education. And whenever we find those barriers, we immediately address them, right? And so part of that, our work and our responsible families, is have a really good definition of the problem and figuring out what is impacting attendance, and then us driving interventions and supports that way.
Okay. I also have some questions about the OSS parent workshops. So for one, that's a very impressive list of workshops that are being offered, and I'm very happy that the district is doing that. I'm wondering what was the impetus for offering them, who leads and designs them? I'll start with those two questions.
Sure. So a range of folks. So we have partnered with the Massachusetts Partnership for Youth. They're a group that's available to districts throughout the state, and they've come in and done some professional development. Cartwheel has actually provided some of these professional developments as well, and then sort of leveraging other community partnerships that we have. David, what was your first question?
Regarding what was sort of the impetus for offering them?
Honestly, the impetus of being a parent is really hard. And we know that engaging in this work as a silo, if we're just like, hey, we're school, we're just going to do school, and we're not actively engaging and supporting families, we're not going to get anywhere, right? Supporting mental health is a deeply complex issue. And so we have to make sure that it's not just a school thing, that we're also working with families to do this work.
I see. And because these are such great resources, I'm also wondering about access for parents and caregivers. So what time of day are these offered? How are they advertised?
Yep. So we will typically advertise them in multiple places, including the superintendent's weekly update. So if you're a parent watching this, definitely take a look at that, because you'll see these advertised there. Most of these, there was a couple that was in person, but most of these are happening remotely, because we know that's pretty helpful for parents and their schedule. And typically they are in the evening, and we'll sort of shift some of it, sort of balancing when presenters are available. But typically we try to hold them in the evening, and we do typically record them, and then folks who register, we typically have a period of time where folks can watch them asynchronously.
Excellent. All right. Thank you.
I'll just expand on that a little bit more, David. I have been very passionate about this in particular because parents are our partners, and we want to be able to provide them the tools that they are asking for and that they need to help support their children. Nobody gives you a manual, when you become a parent. And there's a lot of things that, just new every year, right? With our kids, we might have an older child where we thought, oh, that child was great, everything went well. And then, we have another child and we think, I've got this. I already did parenthood, and completely different, right? Completely different experience. So one of the initiatives that we focused on this year was increasing the number of parent workshops that we were able to offer to families. Part of what we do also when we are advertising, I will send district-wide emails directly to parents, letting them know when workshops are coming up, having them sign up for them. And when they do sign up for them, I do ask some questions. They take a little survey for me so that we can solicit some information from them, really get some feedback on what are the things that they would like to see in the future come to them, what ages their children are in, the grades, all of those things, so that we can fine tune our parent workshops. And also, Matt spoke a little bit about the different folks that we're partnering with, but they're one of the most dynamic ones that we had this year was when we partnered with the Brookline Police and the DEA, and we had a very interactive in-person parent workshop around substance awareness and prevention. So it's really, collaborating with our community partners too, to offer these resources for parents. And we are very excited about planning that, for the future years as well.
All right, thank you. Helen, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure, you may have said it, but what was the attendance like at these workshops? I mean, how many people dialed in or?
So it ranges, and I'll also offer too that some of the survey questions that I've also taken have been around what is the best time? What is the best day? And we've tried to offer it at different times as well. It depends. Generally, we will get, between 75 to 100 participants when it's a Zoom.
Yep.
And then it varies also when it's in person.
I'm wondering, do you advertise in the Housing Authority through their newsletter? Because that might be one place, that and Steps to Success would be, to more target some audiences, if you could, might be a thought for the future.
Absolutely. Thanks, Helen.
Thank you.
Adelia?
Thank you for all the hard work, because this is not easy stuff at all, and I appreciate it.
And I'll stay on the theme of parents, and I'm clearly a parent who doesn't read enough of my emails. I try to read, but physical notes, when they come back with my kids, I do read those because my kid hands them to me. So I would recommend, if you have a calendar for the year or something, or I don't know, Mariah, I didn't know about Cartwheel Care. And, I think it's important for parents to know that these services, because I, for example, go to my pediatrician and then they give me these lists of, you can reach these professionals, and then I'm calling. If I knew I could call the school, and I know you said we know who these kids are, but there are probably some kids that fly under your radars too, because the parents are out of it. So I do think sending home a physical note about what is available would be really great for those of us who have hundreds of emails and are not very good at reading them. But the other question I had is, what services do you have during the summer, if any? I know food security is something that we sort of are addressing, but is there anything for kids? Because obviously a break-in, so is Cartwheel Care and other services available year-round?
Yep.
Great, that's really helpful too. And then I really wanted to commend you for the adult wellness piece. I mean, we heard from some educators around burnout today, and we've heard it a lot, and I think that's really wise to focus on the adults and the kids' lives. So, and I know you mentioned the health department, and they're a small department, but hopefully they can help with some of that too, and programming. I think I had one more question. Around, and you mentioned in your presentation briefly in the suicide sort of awareness that, what do you do when your friend might need help? I think that is really important for kids to know who to go to if they have a peer, and kind of the peer network dynamics. I think we think about as, socio-emotional learning as at the individual level, but often what we see is like these peer networks, not only with substance use, but also with, cutting or other sort of, it's groups of kids that are doing it. So I'm curious about how that plays out without feeling like you're telling on your friend or something like that.
Yeah, what a beautiful question. Yeah. So part of within mental health literacy is that kids are taught, like when your friend says, hey, don't tell anyone, keep a secret, that's not healthy. You're not being a good friend, right? So kids are taught a ton around not keeping secrets, and they'll know that, like, if you're asking your friend to keep a secret, they're not going to do so. And that kids are really, really taught there are certain things under no condition do you not tell an adult about them. So that's a really active part of the work that we're doing with kids, so they have a really good understanding of how they can access support either for themselves or for a friend.
Anyone else? For those of you on Zoom, I can't see if you have your hands raised, so do any of you have any comments or questions? All right, guess not. Well, thank you very much for this presentation. It's greatly appreciated.
Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will now move on to subcommittee and liaison reports. Helen, capital improvements?
Yes, I'm ready. So I didn't have the report ready last week for the capital subcommittee, so I'll do it tonight. We met on June 6th, the committee, and we discussed the FY23 repair and maintenance budget. It has been almost completely expended. Due to an increase in the budget out of a total of $3,588,203 was budgeted, and $3,484,184 has been spent or encumbered, leaving about $104,000 for anything that comes up between now and June 30th. There's the ability to carry forward some of that money through ARPA, and it can be used then in FY24. The greater majority of these monies are used for preventive maintenance on all of our buildings, and the repair and maintenance budget for FY24 is $635,077. It's an increase from this year. And I think it's been good that we've been keeping up with, Charlie reported all this and is pleased with the ability to keep up now on some of these things, despite the fact that he can't hire in-house people to do some of this repair and maintenance, which would be preferable and certainly less expensive. We also discussed the mini CIP that has been approved for this summer. Work would begin on July 1st, and I spoke about that in my last report. And basically, we're refreshing the first floor of Lincoln School with painting, flooring, carpeting, refinishing of woodwork, and refinishing of the stage. In addition, we'll be refurbishing the Baker School auditorium, taking out the fixed seating so that the space can have better utilization, and resanding the floor and stage so that it'll be a big space that they can use for multi-purpose space. And there'll be new stage curtains both at the Lincoln and at the Baker. With whatever money's left, we'll be replacing flooring and other things like that. The bids are still coming in, and we're still working on some of that. We also discussed requests by Baker and Ridley schools for murals on the outside walls of buildings. There were different opinions about murals on the outside of buildings. There was an agreement that artwork within the building was the purview of the principal, and we probably need to examine our policy and have a conversation with Charlie Simmons regarding the integrity of the buildings, the exteriors of the buildings. So more to come on that.
Any questions for Helen? All right, we'll go
I have
to.
a question.
All right, go ahead, Nancy.
Just wanted to say, Helen, that I do believe we do have takers for those chairs, and hopefully we'll be able to save on some disposal fees and keep the planet greener for keeping that stuff out of the landfill. So thanks
Nancy's
to you and to Charlie Simmons and his team. And that's, to me, that's very, very good news.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention that, Nancy. Thank you for
Oh,
reminding.
no, Helen, don't be silly.
No,
Thanks
it's
to you
important
and your
because I
help.
think it is important to recycle things that are still usable. The chairs, some of them aren't. They should be aware. Some are broken, but the greater majority are in good shape and could be reused. And I'm glad that you were able to find somebody who can use them.
Thanks
So
to
thank
you, and thanks to Charlie's team, and to Matt. Thanks, everyone.
And Matt, yeah, thank you.
On a similar note regarding disposal and more sustainable ways to engage in that, a town meeting member approached me at town meeting, our corruption precinct 15, asking whether there's any consideration with Pierce of engaging in deconstruction.
So I don't know all the answers, but I do think that the cement will be recycled. The cement that doesn't, they have to separate out the asbestos from the cement, and I'm not sure exactly how that happens, but they do have to do that. And then the cement can be recycled. We do know that the what are they called? The library shelving that's fairly new will be going over to Lincoln School. So what we do with most of our things, when a school moves, they take what they need, and whatever they might not need gets distributed among other schools. So, and some schools haven't had every school that has a renovation usually gets outfitted totally. And there's a purpose to that, so that we start everything new and ready. But then those schools who are further down the line from their last renovation can maximize what they have and what they need by going shopping, so to speak, in the school that is moving. So we try and use everything. There are some tables sometimes that people have seen in the room in the schools that we bought during COVID in order to have individual spaces that now we don't need because that's not the way we teach. But we still keep them so that in classrooms where they will be needed in the future, we would have them. Because things break. I mean, after a while, things do break and need replacement. So if that's helpful.
All right, thank you. Nancy, go ahead.
One more thing to add. When I asked about the Pierce renovation as well, and in the historical building, we might have some architectural salvage companies come and look at things like doors and some of the original wood that was to the original
Nancy,
build.
don't put your eyes on those. I want them to be refurbished and kept in the building.
Oh, I didn't know. No,
Yes.
because I asked about that, and
There's no
they
reason
didn't know.
there's
I
no,
asked if it was a
please.
gut reno, but I'm just saying, like, anything to keep anything out of landfill is a good.
No. I really feel that's really important. I think what would be important, though, is at Driscoll before it gets torn down. There may be some things there, but not in the historic building at Pierce. Those will be.
Okay, no, I just was saying, before anything goes to landfill, we should look at it and see if.
Yeah, and to that point, I don't know if anybody has noticed, there are freezes in the building that I am hoping we can get this firm Daedalus that actually is run by a Pierce School student whose father was in the business. He restored the Supreme Court. I'm hoping we can get them to restore these and put them up on the 6th floor where we teach ancient Greece, I think in the 6th grade, if I'm not mistaken. So, but that's for the future.
Oh, very nice. Well, I'm glad there's a lot of thought behind what can be saved and reused.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent.
And Nancy's going to help me with it.
All right.
Any way that I can. Anything to keep anything out of landfill is a good thing.
Okay.
All right. So moving on to Valerie, diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice.
Thank you, David. So we met on the 12th, and as I mentioned earlier, we discussed the Brookline menstrual hygiene product access bylaw and adopting that as new business. We also reviewed in conjunction in a joint meeting with the policy subcommittee, transgender student policy, as well as a policy on inclusion in the life of the school. And I think I'll let David speak to that because he did yeoman's work in drafting that policy in short order. So David, I don't want to steal your thunder on that.
All right, so I'll just continue from there. So with the life of the school policy, obviously there's a lot more work that needs to be done with the precise language, but the overall goal, I think we have a broad consensus on, which is essentially to try to guarantee to the best of our abilities, and of course, in concert with state and federal law, full inclusion in all school-related activities for our students, whether it's an after-school program, whether it's an extracurricular activity, whether it's school-sponsored or by a third-party provider, to ensure that the necessary supports are in place for our students, whether that means that they have a one-on-one aid with them for that extracurricular, whatever their IEP might require. Also, we talked about transportation in the context of METCO students to ensure that there can be participation truly for all of our students in the district in after-school activities, anything relating to the life of the school. So we're very much committed to that process and we'll continue to work on it. We had members of CPAC participate in the discussion. There's a lot of public interest in this. And so I look forward to continued conversations and a next draft. All right, moving on to finance. Mariah?
No update since last week. Just a reminder that we're not meeting next week.
All right, anything on accounts payable?
Not for this week.
Okay. Andy, negotiations?
Yep, we had another meeting yesterday with the BEU to negotiate the para contract. As we heard from Jaswinder Shubo earlier, this was a longish meeting that ended a little after 2 a.m. We made substantial progress toward an agreement, and we'll be meeting again with the BEU Tuesday, June 20th.
Are there any additional liaison updates? Go ahead, Helen.
So I think you guys know I'm the liaison to the Brookline Mental Health Center. And last night they had their board meeting that I attended, and there was a presentation apropos of our SEL meeting where they talked about groups that they run throughout the year for kids, all ages and different issue type groups. It was really, I'm glad that they're doing it. It's a way that they're trying to accomplish to see more kids and have more of an impact. So just a FYI.
All right. Anyone else?
No, just to say thank you to the negotiations team for the long haul. Thank you for going into the wee hours, guys. We appreciate you very much.
And to the staff who were part of the team as well. Yes.
Oh, to all of you, thank you very, 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 very much. Thank you.
All right. So any new business? All right. Seeing none, I move that we meet in executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes. Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Brookline Educators Union Paraprofessional Unit, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining and litigating position of the committee and the chair so declares. And purpose 7, to review and approve executive session minutes from the following meeting, June 8th, 2023. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Natalia. Natalia, your vote?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. We will not be returning to open session. So good night to everyone. And this is probably the last full-fledged school committee meeting of the year. I know that may make very many of you feel melancholic, but there is the possibility and likelihood of a shorter meeting later this month if we're able to reach agreements with the BEU. So stay tuned. Good night.
Recording stop.